What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? It is open mic night tonight on Faith Unaltered, where you get to join us and talk about whatever the heaven you want to talk about. This is what we do. This is our give back to our fans, to our audience, to our listeners that just want to participate in an open mic night with the crew. As you can see, we have my good friend, co-owner and co-host of this channel, David Russell, the other co-host, Joshua Davidson, and the other co-host, the Canadian Dale Glover. Guys, welcome. This is going to be fun and exciting as always, and it's because of our listeners that this episode right here is going to be just superlative. So, guys, welcome. How y'all doing?
Joining us for the first time in a long time also is David's naked chin.
That's true.
Absolutely. When it gets too thick, it hurts. So I have to cut it every once in a while.
Hey,
yes, the labor of
Feels
love.
it feels like my pores are stretching beyond their limit.
Babies will do that to it too. Like
Babies do it. Yeah.
That's what I might be clean shaven.
Teenagers actually stretch you upon your past your limit all the time. So
that's true. GU, Christ is risen. Indeed, he is risen, my friend. Welcome.
And I have 2 graduation teenagers this week, so I won't be here long with you guys, but I am here for a little bit.
All right. Well, let's do it to it. Y'all know the drill, and so let me go ahead and post the link to join us in the comment or the man. Why do I always say that, guys? Like, y'all need to smack me. It's the live chat. It's not the comments. The comments come after the live chat is now. So come on, Tyler, get with it. But you can see the link to join us in the live chat. And if you are watching us on X or on Twitter, for some reason, StreamYard doesn't have it set up to where I can comment on Twitter via StreamYard. And so that's crap. But if you want to, while these guys are talking, I will post the link in. Hopefully I can find the description on Twitter somewhere. It should be there, I would think. And I can get you guys that in a comment under the video. But if you know what we could do, hold on. Let me do this real quick. Just a second, Dale. Let me throw a banner up, and then people can screenshot this. Here we go. People can screenshot this and then enter this in their search bar of their internet provider. Google works best, so Google Chrome works best whenever it's StreamYard. So if you would like to join the conversation, right there is the link. Screenshot that, enter that into your search bar, and please, all are welcome. Join us. But if you get crazy, like, just know we reserve the right to boot people. So if you come on here cussing, throwing a fit, stuff like that, like, we want legit actual conversation, substantive conversation about Christianity. So we welcome debate. We welcome, if you've watched recent episodes, if you disagree with us on a topic, bring your arguments. We want to hear them out. I know there's a lot of people that was not too happy with the Dynamic Omniscient episode that we did. And then me and Dale later coming out and affirming that we would hold to, based on the interview that I did with Dr. David Bradshaw the other day. So Dale and I both participated in that episode. And the conversation that Dale participated in with Dr. Rhoda and Warren, we seem to affirm both, or not both, but the weak version of Dynamic Omniscience. And whenever we came out and said that, that wasn't received too well by some people in the chat. So I'm assuming somebody will come on and debate that topic with us tonight. If not, though...
Oh, sorry.
Oh, just real quick, I'll finish up, and then, Dale, I'll hand it over to you. But if you want to talk about questions, if you have questions specifically for us or about Christianity, we welcome that as well. If you don't want to join us live, you can always turn off your camera. If you're embarrassed about being seen on camera or whatever, we were all like that at one point too, but we got over it. So it's not that bad, I promise y'all. But you can ask us questions in the live chat as well, and we will be answering both super chats and non-super chat questions throughout this stream. And so obviously super chats get priority, but don't feel like you have to send us money just to get your question answered. This episode specifically is for you guys and gals, and we are more than welcome to take non-super chat questions as well, and we will. Okay, Dale, over to you, brother.
Yeah, so I was just expressing like kind of bafflement that like, okay, so yeah, that's very controversial. On I guess people are saying this on Twitter or something like that, where this controversy is going on. But yeah, I mean, the weak version of dynamic omniscience or something, that this is a view that Dr. William Lane Craig teaches, right? I mean, if you believe in the theory of time, it's just entailed that you have to believe God's knowledge changes. Yeah. Otherwise, he's a schizomaniac. He believes in false things. He's not God. He's not omniscient. He would have a false belief. No, he knows today is May 17th, and he will know tomorrow. He will know today is May 18th. Right. So yeah, his knowledge has to be dynamic on that front. But where the controversy comes in, obviously, I would not take the strong version where they're going into open theism. I think that's unbiblical and stuff like that. Nope, God knows all the future propositions and stuff. So
well, and Dale, just to on that point, just real quick, and so this is where I got things messed up with Dr. Ryan Mullins. So I've been corrected on that now, and so like we would all affirm. And I'm specifically speaking about you and me, Dale, because and I think Josh, I think you're into this too, but David hasn't spoken on this, so I don't want to speak for him. I'll let him speak for himself here in a minute. But like there is a difference between the weak dynamic omniscience version, which affirms 7 basic ideas that Dr. Alan Rodel laid out very, very distinctly for us in a previous episode. So if you're not familiar with those, check those out. But affirming weak dynamic omniscience is not affirming open theism. And so whenever you have people like James White saying, yeah, there's no difference, there is a big difference. And you can watch both of those episodes that we did with Dr. Bradshaw to see the Orthodox perspective on that, as well as the interview that we did with Dr. Rhoda and Warren for a Protestant version of that as well. But all in all, we're affirming the same thing. We just talk about between Orthodox and Protestants that affirm that. We distinguish between the essence and energies distinction, and the Protestants don't really, but that's a side note, and that's a how-to thing. And so the point is we come and we come to the same conclusions. So.
Gotcha. All right. Well, like I said, I came with kind of a simple one topic that's interesting and stuff like that for everyone. Did you guys want me to give that topic, or is the first topic?
Yeah, no, we will. So I see Mitch in the queue here, and so Dale, if you want to talk about that topic, sure. I will bring Mitch on after that. So Mitch, hang out for just a second, and then let's discuss what Dale you want to talk about since you're prepared, and then we'll bring Mitch on to talk to us here in just a second.
Sounds good. He's got his cigarette, so he's good. But so yeah, my it's something we've never spoken about on this show. Oh, Josh and David are gone. All right. So it's something we never addressed, but it's an atheist argument that I think is interesting, and we can kind of handle it quickly and answer it. But it's called the deceptive concealment argument for atheism, and they'll say that, well, there are certain things in nature, for example, where it appears like God is a trickster, he's a liar, he's a deceiver, because he's deceiving us. So, for example, they'll point to starlight, right? For thousands of years, human beings have just looked up at the stars, and it looks like, oh, we're seeing the stars as they exist today. But up to the 20th century, we find out scientifically light travels at a constant speed, so it's taking, in some cases, billions of years for that light to reach our eyeballs here on Earth. And we're actually gazing back in time, how the stars looked like billions of years ago or something like that. So the atheist will say, well, see, God is tricking us. He's causing us to have false beliefs. And they'll point to other examples like quantum physics or relativity theory that seem to go against, the common sense understanding of how the world works and stuff like that. And they'll say your God is a trickster, he's a deceiver, and therefore the Christian God can't be real. So I just wanted to get, if an atheist gives it's called the deceptive concealment argument. So yeah, well, what's our take on an argument like that if an atheist raises that?
I'll go first.
I'll let you go first.
Go ahead.
That's fine.
I think it's utter nonsense because we have a reality that's real. Okay, time does exist. we're actually where God wanted us. He put us exactly where we are so we can observe the known universe, and it's for the basis of knowledge that the universe is the way it is. It's so we can discover it. It's so we can learn about the past as well as the future. So I mean, there's so many things that go into that. I just think it's a ridiculous argument to use, especially when it comes to observing our spot in the universe. Again, we have a reality that we live in that is subject to time, and for inflation to take place and for stars to form, for stars to be where they are, we would have to see them and in light years, so to speak, to be able to understand that the universe is still expanding. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that go into an answer like this that could probably be more organized than what I just said. But in the short, I think a summary version of that is what I just gave. So, I think that answers that question. Is it deceitful? No, it's just reality. It's the world God put us in.
Gotcha.
I think it's also to take liberty to try to pretend like modern science allows the person who's asking the question to sit outside of subjective experience, like there's some sort of Greek god looking at everything with no perceptive filters of any kind or anything like that, to think that that's what real life is if you remove the experience from humanity and just become something like an objective observer floating out in space with no sense data to speak of. It begs the same question as if I tried to describe to you a red ball without describing anything using my sense data. What ball is left? Right? Like we're pretending like sense data can be like bypassed and still have a reality that we can understand as humans. I think that's silly, to be honest with you, top to bottom. It doesn't make any sense. Like, and aside from that, the ancient world was not ruled by scientific and empirical thought in the least. And so that's not a problem for me, especially as a human person still embodied and living in the world. Phenomenology is the most direct experience I have with reality, not this abstraction of objective empirical sciences, because that is an abstraction. I don't ever interact with H2O. I interact with wet, cold, warm, thirsty. Like those are the things I interact with, not H2O. I don't interact with the chemicals, the compound that water is made up of. And so that also isn't deceptive. It's a silly thing to say. To think that the world is the abstraction that science presents to us is a deception.
Yeah,
So I
and
flip that back.
Josh, I would also like to piggyback off that for just a minute to just say, I mean, if the world wasn't the way it is, reality wasn't the way it is, we wouldn't be able to have these conversations to begin with, because everything, there would be no order, there'd be no organization, there'd be no time. I mean, to say it's deceptive, I think is the wrong term. Now, I mean, where I would part ways just a little bit with Josh on this is the aspect of, uh, uh, I mean, to say empiricism wasn't how the ancients thought, that depends on the culture, right? I mean, we do have certain pockets that were trying to promote this stuff from Aristotle's time and Socrates' time. They wanted to get into that mode of thinking, but not everybody did, right? So yeah, I agree with you on the aspect of, yeah, we experience wet, so yeah, I mean, to say that reality is something to do with deception just because we experience things differently or we observe things differently is just a wrong way to go about it.
Pass.
Yeah, I mean,
Pass.
I was gonna say I'm not saying that there wasn't anybody trying to think about the world in an objective sense to try to make sense of it that wasn't relying purely on what I think about it, right? To say like, irrespective of my opinion, it exists this way. That's fine. But either way, none of the data we have that science has produced has been filtered through anything other than our sense data to make the interpretation, because we have to interpret the data, and the person doing the interpretation is an embodied human. Like, there you go. So you have the same problem. There's no way to get outside of that to be this imaginary, objective Greek god looking at the universe without any sense data. That doesn't exist. And so I think the idea that in order to view the world truthfully, we have to pretend like it's something that we've never experienced, I think is just silly to begin with.
I think pointing to stars that we know that light travels at a certain speed, and to say that, well, they look different than they actually are, I think it's kind of silly. I think there's better arguments that would fit into that category of God being deceptive, such as the divine hiddenness argument. I would rather deal with that argument. And I'm not trying to I'm not trying to dodge it in a sense, because if someone were to ask me, well, Tyler, what do you think about the stars and stuff like that? I would just point them to this episode and say, well, listen to Josh and David on this. And then Dale's going to give an answer. I don't have an answer. But I think I would point to like what I just said, is that I think there's better arguments than that, because there's a lot of what scientists will tell us is illusory in the sense, but illusion doesn't necessarily entail deceptiveness. And so even if illusion is real, I don't think I would be so quick to correlate that with deceptiveness in a sense. So with that being said, Dale, what's your answer? And then I'll be right back, guys. I got to run to the potty real quick.
Okay, yeah. So basically, I agree with what David and Josh were saying and stuff. That I think David provided a great answer in terms of the concealment, if there is any such thing. It's, look, God has built into the universe our ability to grow and learn and to develop methods like science to learn about the natural world that God has created for us and stuff like that. So it's that aspect doesn't it's a total non sequitur to say, oh, but that's a deceptive concealment, as though it's immoral in some way. I mean, look, with the starlight, the light doesn't come with a little label saying, oh, hey, I exist, I'm showing you what I look like right today. No, human beings made a false assumption. That's not God's fault. That's ours. We're to blame, if anything, for being too hasty in our assumptions, right? All we knew is that we're seeing the starlight and we're seeing things in the sky through our eyes and stuff like that, right? So
yeah. So why would stars even have to say that? Are not stars, but light. I mean, what criteria are you using to even propose that?
Exactly, and believe it or not, so this is an argument that I used. Now, David, you actually disagreed with me on this, but I've seen kind of a similar argument with the Shroud of Turin, right? Because I'm sort of famous for saying, well, let's pretend for the sake of argument that it was a medieval miracle shroud. God, poof, made this medieval miraculous images on a shroud cloth. And there's no little label on that shroud that says, hey, I was made in 30 AD. That God's not being deceptive. People are making false assumptions, just like they did about the stars or how reality works versus quantum physics and stuff like that. It's the same thing. We're not warranted in those assumptions, and God's not deceptive at all just because we falsely assume something. No, He's created us, and we're supposed to make our decisions based on the evidence, and we'll learn and grow over time. As David gave a great answer on, why things are concealed. It's to make life better, for us to grow, progress, learn more and more, and gain more and more knowledge to get closer and closer toward God. Yeah.
But you can play the same reductionist game with just about anything and strip it of its actual experiential meaning. You could say colors don't exist. It's your brain trying to fill gaps. Like, okay, and
well, that's the problem with philosophical skepticism, though, is you can take it to any ridiculous means you want,
right? But you can point
it
it at
comes
anything you want and
Exactly.
play the same game. Is what they're doing.
Exactly.
I think you could play the same game with the atmospheric pressure and the rays of the light at when it reaches the horizon. We call it sunset.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful. It's like, is that objectively beautiful? It's like, no, technically, it's just this, this, and this. So if you say it's
flat
just
earthers do the same thing, dude.
Right, exactly.
Light refraction.
It's just this, huh?
Light refraction.
Yes. Exactly.
I've been watching a lot of flat Earth videos lately, so that was their buzzword that they hate. So
it's like, okay, but even still, it's like, if you have, let's say you have this thing that humans see, we have a reaction to it and inspires awe and transcendence in us, and we go, wow, and then somebody comes along with this same reductionistic game and says it's just blank, and strips it of its meaning and think they've done something. They haven't done anything good.
Right. On an off note, though, it's so funny that we brought up flat earthers. I was just thinking about this the other day. Is that I was actually saw a TikTok on it. It was how people are trying to like confuse Buzz Aldrin's word about going to the moon and all that, right? People are always trying to do that, right? And it's so funny. I was sitting in this is probably about 7 years ago now. I was sitting in my job and I got to meet astronauts for the first time ever.
Nice.
And I asked them, I was like, so what is it like up there? And they're like, very round.
Yeah, and these guys are Christians
very round.
too,
And this is the guy also
Yeah.
that took the pictures of 9/11 from space. So,
Wow.
pretty cool stuff.
Oh, we lost Mitch. Okay.
He might be back. So we're just getting ready to bring that cigarette smoking fool on. Like, what are you doing, Mitch? Get back on here.
Weird, that's cool. Animals
Yeah,
have
I
been
saw
caught
that.
seemingly admiring the sea and sunset should be studied more. That is I'll have to look into that. That is of particular interest to me, actually.
Yeah, it'd be
cool.
sweet. Just for our audience, Mitch is back. But just for our audience, so I've pinned the link to join us in the live chat on YouTube, and I also went and put a comment on Twitter underneath the live video. So I found it, thank God. Usually those things are kind of hard to find, but anyway, just go to your profile, Tyler. It's right there. So okay, I did that, and there it was. So wow, amazing. And so I did post the comment on there that will link you directly to our studio. And so join the queue, and then after we probably won't bring like multiple. I mean, depending on the topics and stuff like that, we're not opposed to bringing multiple people on at the same time. But it's always kind of nice to, especially if it's a question, like to be able to engage with the person, one-on-one type. So anyway, Mitch, what's up, dude? Welcome.
Oh, hello, everybody.
You Canadian cigarette smoking freak, you? No, I'm just playing. What's up, buddy? Hey, look, man. Hey, look. Just so you're not like we're not like we're isolating you. I got my Zen right here, so it's a nasty habit for me too, bro. So.
Oh yeah, it's a tough one. But nice to see everybody. Tyler, you're looking extra shiny. Looks like you must have gone in the water pretty recently. Hey, congratulations, man.
I did very recently. Lazarus Saturday, brother. So it was good. It was a good experience.
But I wanted to bring something to you guys. It's totally off topic. Hope that's all right. Kind of totally different than what you were talking about.
It's open mic, dude. Everything's on topic tonight.
Okay. So I'll just give you a bit of backstory. So I'd been talking with my priest, and for the listeners, I'm Orthodox Christian. I'm not clergy or anything, so please don't take me too serious. But I'd been talking to my priest, and I told him, listen, man, I had a run-in with some Mormons, and they had these cool business cards. They had all this stuff going on. I was just so impressed by their evangelism and their zeal for it and their ability to do it. I said, why don't we start doing some of this stuff? Why don't we have like cool business cards and doing this kind of stuff? So he gave me a blessing to kind of do some local stuff, some evangelism. And then long story short, we've got an Orthodox talk tonight. And through just some online sort of reaching out to people, I got in touch with this guy who he claims that he is an occultist, and he seems to have some satanic stuff on his social media, and seems like a decent guy. He's coming to the talk tonight. I'm going to go pick him up, and I'm going to take him to our church. And I told him there's an open Q&A where he can say whatever he wants, and so it should be interesting. But I'm just wondering from you guys, if you have any advice or input or anything as far as how to engage somebody like this. Like it appears as though he's got kind of like a classical satanic worldview of just do as thou wilt, and somehow has some scope of morality. These types of people who will say, well, God's not real, but everything that your God did is bad, even though they have no justification for bad. That seems to be where he's at. So just thought I'd bring that to you guys because it's kind of interesting, and thought you might have some good advice for me.
That is interesting, very much so. And I want to, so anybody obviously can jump on this, but Josh, I feel like you will have some very interesting things to say about this, just because of some of the conversations that we've had in the past. And so, do you want to take this one first, bro?
Sure.
Okay.
Well, okay.
I don't want to put you on the spot, but
no. Well, I'm on the spot. We're on.
Well,
anyway. So, as far as the Satanism thing goes, I usually leave that on the background because I don't try to make a weighing and measuring of the spirituality of competing worldviews the first thing that I would talk about with somebody in apologetics. Usually what I would do, my approach to apologetics is primarily investigational so that I'm not just hacking away at branches needlessly. This person might have some really usable and workable ideas in his intuitions that don't make it into his worldview because of he's just being cynical. I don't know this person, but usually that's the kind of flavor of person who's going to have those kind of worldviews is, I'm a moral person, but I don't need God to be that way. It's like, okay, you can be moral in some sense. Maybe your intuition is to chase the right things, but you've had the wrong good at the top. And so you're chasing something. And when you begin to sacrifice to that thing that is good, but it's not the good, you begin to have the drawback of that, the negative consequences of sacrificing to something that is improper. And that's going to, in some sense, become a devil to you. Right. And so maybe you were chasing good, but it was the wrong good. And it began to, reality punished you for sacrificing to the wrong good, as it was kind of designed to do. And then that maybe calloused or hardened him. And so that cynicism might be the first thing that's flavoring his worldview. And usually what I would do is approach first with questions to try to figure out where this person even is. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of the time, it might be playing the long game with this kind of person that would be the most fruitful, rather than expecting just the Q&A that is to open a door, not to close one. And so I would say, just as a premise, be willing to try to invest in long game with somebody like that, because there's probably a lot of blockades to learning that have to just even be knocked down in order to open the door. With somebody like that, I usually ask enough questions up front in series until I find a question mark over their head, and then anything I have to say might be of value to them. But usually with somebody like that, I would withhold immediate correction and try to figure out and isolate what the actual difficulty is, because a person that's willing to go that far is usually a thinking person, but perhaps their disappointments are rooted in faulty expectations rather than finding out God is a falsity. He might have found out that something that he thought about God or expected from God was a falsity, and conflated the two things. And so I would say tread lightly and begin with questions.
Right.
Yeah, and
I would also confirm that too, because what I like to do is called relational apologetics, right? It's a lot like what Josh is just saying. Is there's a lot of question asking, listening. That's a big deal. Is listening to what the person has to say, and you'll usually be able to spot out the volitional aspect of it as well, and be able to work with that later down the line, because it is a long game if you care about this person, and you should, because you are a Christian, right? So
right.
the long game is preferable. It's and when you're asking questions, you can always turn it to a degree where you just put a stone in their shoe, just get them to think about something. Like Josh, that's the equivalent of what Josh is saying is a question mark over their head, right? Is to like kind of give an answer that's not really correcting or anything, but is like engaging. It makes them engage in thought, even deeper thought, something that they might not have considered, right? So that's part of the long game. Then there's personality types, and this is where I want to leave you on my end is there's personality types, and you'll find that out when you see the volitional aspect. Are they a steamroller? Would they be the type of person that just like bulls over you with uh 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 conversation if you try to give an answer, right? Or are they the silent one that's sitting there like thinking? Are they, there's just a whole bunch of personality aspects that you can learn as you go in this, and see where they're at, and then work with that personality.
I should have went first because I'm about to drop some just insane philosophical wisdom and practical wisdom on you, Mitch, that these guys just can't even touch, okay?
Oh,
and
yeah.
it's so simple. People, it baffles me because people don't do this online anymore. But that's literally treat others how you want to be treated. It's so simple that we forget that people are people and that they are made in the image of God, right? And we want to treat them as to how they believe rather than who they are. right? And so that's the only thing I would say, and because I agree with Josh and David wholeheartedly on this part, or on this part. Definitely try to make it a long game. Obviously, put a stone in their shoe, but just being there for this person and whoever they are. Again, the label doesn't matter as much as the person and the value of that person is, right? And so I just say treat them like Jesus would, bro. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Tyler, that follows
Yeah.
that follows our motto that we always talk about here at Faith Unaltered, which is people want to know how much you care before they care how much you know.
Right.
You know?
Yep.
So that's a definite, keep that in the forefront of your witness.
I think that's all super good advice, and I appreciate it. And because I don't want to just like precept the guy to death. You know what I mean? And just be like, how do you know what's good? And just get into church history and all that. But it's an interesting thing because I did like some evangelism before when I was an evangelical, and kind of the whole aim was basically get the butt in the seat, like get them into the church and hope that they have a spiritual experience that's strong enough that they'll keep chasing it. You know what I mean? And then they'll keep showing up. Whereas now it's totally different. I mean, people can have a spiritual experience when they come to the Orthodox Church, but it is absolutely different. We're asking a lot more of people than we were before. And so for someone who's fresh, I think it's new for me. So I just want to make sure I tread carefully and move slow. You know what I mean? So we'll see how it goes.
One of the things that kept me coming back to the Orthodox Church is the first experience that I had with the Orthodox Church, and that was that the people were just super friendly and very welcoming, right? And that was one of the things that stood out to me, because nobody wants to be in a place where they're not welcomed. You know what I mean? And so I even, so let me just clarify something real quick, Mitch. Is this the first time you're actually meeting this dude face to face, or girl, or who? I don't want to say who is it, but
yeah. So it's a dude
okay.
That commented on the Facebook post, and the part of the reason I'm nervous is because the talk is about the occult. So like it's advertised as saying like demonic warfare, occultism, and hypnotherapy. And this guy commented being kind of critical, saying like, well, these things aren't bad, yada, yada, yada. And so I reached out to him and he said, well, I would go, but I don't have a car. So I said, I'll go pick you up. And he said, sure. So I'm going to go pick him up and I hope that he doesn't cast a spell on me or nothing. But but yeah, then I'm just going to bring him. I told him he can be as critical as he wants, because there's like an open mic Q&A at the end. Okay. So it could just go like totally insane, but he seems like a nice dude. So I don't know. I guess we'll see.
Yeah, well, no weapon formed against you will prosper anyway, so don't worry about that.
Right. There you go.
Also, it's going to make a lot of difference too. Like Tyler said, your lived countenance in front of this person is going to be your first witness and testimony before them, especially if they're not open to what you have to say yet. They're perceiving you long before you speak. That's just the human experience. And so the person you are is going to be on display much more than your words in your first meeting with somebody like that.
Yeah. And how you relate to it is a big deal too.
We're going to have some trouble because I'm a recovering asshole. So
hey, recovering is the key word there. So
yes.
But what time is the just out of curiosity, what time do you got to go pick this guy up?
In like 30-40 minutes.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll definitely be praying for you, bro, and I hope everything goes good. But normally, like, whenever I find myself like going to engage in something like this, now I haven't been in this specific situation before, so it might go crazy, right? Like, but 99% of the time it doesn't, and people are just people, and so I got a feeling he's going to come, he's going to listen, he might be critical at the end, and then you guys can have an interesting discussion on the way back. But if I were you, bro, like, I would probably spend, like, whenever you first meet this guy, spend more time listening than critiquing.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. I think so. Because part of the mindset, because I think I'm going to run. I better run and get ready and get out of here. But I'll leave this with you guys because it might be something like an interesting jump off point, is that I've been talking with some of the people in my church, and because I've noticed this trend in Orthodox circles that we kind of view the church as like the final boss of Christianity. It's like we're supposed to find people who, like you start off Pentecostal, then you end up Catholic, then Eastern Catholic, and then you become Orthodox.
Right.
Whereas we're supposed to be just Christianity. Like, we're not supposed to be this thing that is like you have to work your way to it. This is the religion that all the pagans converted to. You know what I mean? And so there must be a way for us to be able to just streamline this process, skip all the goober church, and just bring them right in to the real deal without scaring them off. So
right.
I'm hoping that that trend can continue in the Orthodox world. And yeah, man, we'll just see how it goes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Lord be with you tonight, Mitch. And like I said, bro, I'll be praying for you, and hopefully
you're
God
doing
will
more
do
than the
something with this
frozen
guy.
chosen. I mean, oh, sorry. Did I say that out loud? No, just kidding.
And as an encouragement for you, before we're done with that, Mitch, D. Stevens says, "I came out of the occult to Christ. It happens often. Don't worry."
Nice. Right on, man. All right. Well, thanks, fellas. Appreciate all the insight, and we'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely,
Right on,
Mitch.
have a good night.
Peace out.
All right. See ya. All right. Right on. Right
That's good.
on.
I like that.
So here's the thing that I've been thinking about, guys, and Mitch really just confirmed this for me. To be honest, I really think that Faith Unaltered on Fridays, and I'm not saying that everybody has to do this. Like, I think this would be a good idea. Josh and I were kind of talking about it a little bit, and then I mentioned it to Dane, and he said both these guys said they were on board. And so I would really like to see Faith Unaltered transition more into, even if it's just for a season, a practical living out of Christianity. Right? We can incorporate theology obviously into that, but to emphasize like practical living more, because that's where Josh and I really left off with CSG. And it seems like we haven't really made it full circle back to that yet. But that's just my thoughts, and maybe more for our audience too, that's something that maybe y'all can look forward to whenever I come up with shows on the months that I do, or the weeks that I do, I should say, for the month, that will be focusing more on practicality. I know Josh has really been doing that in Cosmic Corner as well, and I want to incorporate that into our Friday nights as well. So just something to think about, y'all, and let me know what you think. But Dell, we didn't get to you in that segment. Is there anything that you would add to what we said, or before we move on to the next guest, is there anything that you would add?
So I think you guys' answers were spot on. I mean, this is the first time Mitch is meeting this guy, right? And oh, there's BJ. So yeah, it's really okay getting to know him. You've got the event, and it's designated. It's perfect for what he's into, but let him raise his critical thinking, his critical questions about Christianity. Get to know him. Why is he attracted to the occult? Why is he disattracted to Christianity? So Mitch kind of hinted that he talks a lot about moral. He takes moral exception to the God of the Bible. Find out, well, okay, let me find out what exactly is it. I want to hear your thoughts. Like, what do you object? And keep it open and say, like, yeah, I want to think about this, and can we talk again? And maybe I can try to see how I would address those issues. And yeah, let's talk again. I'll come up with those, and I've got some questions for you to think about. Putting that pebble in the shoe, as David Russell was saying, right? Because I think Mitch also mentioned, if I picked up on it, that he's kind of a relativist, right? He's like, oh, what's true? He's like, okay, it's true for me, but that's not true for you, kind of thing. So yeah, like I would raise kind of questions about the nature of truth for him, because a lot of occultists deny objective truth flat out, and also those moral issues. And like, okay, what is it that makes something moral or not? Like, put something so he has something to think about, and on the same end, you're thinking about his points, and then you can come back at a future time. But really, at this point, it's get to know this guy. Like,
right?
What are his issues? What is his beliefs and stuff like that? Right.
I would also say, it's a lot harder to go from the stands and get into the game, right? When you're getting to the game, you don't just don't jump on the field and start playing, right? You have to have a plan. So, I've made this mistake several times as I, been practicing relational apologetics and stuff like that, is listening to people, but not really writing down what they have to say. Like, if they really are asking questions and stuff, research the answers, write them down, and kind of memorize them. Do the work. Have a game plan, and then you'll be ready to throw that touchdown. You know what I mean?
Right.
So yeah, do the work. There is some legwork that has to be done, and you got to be willing to do that instead of just like letting their questions soar over your head and you just kind of being a willing bystander and shaking your head and listening to them, or supposedly listening to them, but really listening to them is writing those questions down and getting them answers that they need in a way that relates to them as well.
The first step in winning the football game is watching the pregame tapes from the week before.
Right. Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
I have one I see we have BJ, so like I just have one last question, and I was going to ask this to Mitch, but I didn't get a chance to speak, so I'll ask you, Tyler, because you're Orthodox as well. So
yeah,
something Tyler Mitch mentioned is that it getting them to church is harder, or sorry, bringing them to church is harder than it is when you're evangelizing in Protestantism. Like he hinted that there's some kind of additional expectation. So I was just wondering, like, what do you know what that was about? Like, what is it that's different?
I think he was talking more so about the entry of the church rather than visiting one. It's easy to visit an Orthodox parish, but it's very difficult to become Orthodox. It's a process.
Right.
I see. Yeah.
Right, because I mean, so this is just my experience from becoming Southern Baptist, right? And then becoming Orthodox, because I did both whenever I moved back up here to Indiana. And the process for joining the Southern Baptist church that me and my wife was a part of for about 5 years, whenever I was a Calvinist, was, we sat down a couple times with the pastor. He gave us the Baptist Faith and Message thing, the pamphlet. Well, it's not a pamphlet. It's a pretty long little, I don't know. I wouldn't classify it as an article. It's just a printout, of what they believe, right?
Statement of faith, yeah.
Like becoming a member, basically, is what you guys are talking about.
Right, like this is what Baptists believe, and this is universal across the Baptist board. So General Baptist, Southern Baptist, they all would hold, and it's kind of worded in that way so it can be more ecumenical to where all Baptists would hold to it. And basically, he set us down a couple times. We had a discussion with him, and that was it. There was no catechesis. There was no anything. Like, you were required, if you wanted to learn more in depth than that little piece of paper, to take the initiative and to do that, right? Versus, and we were, how long did it take us to become members of Grace and Truth, babe? To become, from the time we visited to the time we became members.
Well, we didn't visit together. You were already
right. I was already there, but how long for you?
It was
a couple weeks.
No,
okay.
Baptized first.
Yeah. Okay. Well, for Lacey, it was a little bit different because she had to get baptized first. But I would say maybe three months tops. And with no, like I was the one that really educated her during that time, versus the Orthodox Church, where you're required to take catechism classes to progress forward into that. And those vary between Orthodox churches. So I've seen some really in-depth catechesis classes. I've seen some pretty shallow catechesis classes. It just depends on our Orthodox church was pretty much in the middle of that, so it wasn't super in depth, but it wasn't like superficial either, right? But a year minimum before you were even considered somebody that was to be baptized.
Okay. So here's why I was asking that, is because I was just going to tell Mitch to remember, try to individualize, right? Like, some people are different. Like, when I was doing my religious research and I was actually going out to different religious institutions, I didn't like when, like, everyone's all over me and stuff like that, and like, oh, welcome, and being over. I kind of saw myself as like a documentary host. Like, okay, at least for the first time I'm there, I just want to kind of sit and observe and like take notes and see what's going on and take stock. Then let me approach you. So, like, some people don't like, oh, we love you, I'm smothering you in love, so just make sure you know what kind of person you are. Like, say, introduce yourself and say, hey, I'm available, but on your terms. When you're ready, you come to me, kind of thing. So
right.
That's the only thing I can add there, because Yeah, I'm not a smothered in love kind of person.
Dale is not. He's a get that spit away from me. Just real quick. I want to address this comment. So I just watched a debate. Justin says I just watched a debate between a few ego guys and Matt Slick. It was unhinged. I know the debate you're talking about. It was with Father Deacon Ananias and Matt Slick, and it started between those two, and then you had Dyer come in, and then you had a couple other guys come in, and Matt Slick was kind of by himself. Now, don't get me wrong, I am not a Matt Slick fan by any stretch of the imagination, and I never really was. But I agree. I think there was one argument that Father Deacon Ananias had that really, stuck with me anyway. But other than that, like, I agree, Justin, that was not a formal debate at all. It started out that way, but then it transpired into something else. So if you're, for entertainment purposes, if anybody wants to watch that, I might be able to find it here in a little bit and post it up in the comments. But I just saw that and I was like, oh, I got to address that real quick.
Well, and just real quick for you, Dale, also, when I went to an Orthodox parish one time so far in person, right? I've learned a whole lot about Orthodoxy, but I've only actually been one time. And in that experience, there were about 2 or 3 people who made it a point to come up to me prior to the liturgy starting and welcoming, saying, "I'm glad you're here. Okay, well, here's the liturgy book. If you have any questions, just let us know."
The little old lady, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a wonderful little old lady. Yeah. And then Father Peter was the actual guy who was in charge and walked up to me and made sure that he knew that I was seen and everything. But they didn't bombard me. In fact, it was the expectation that you're here for the first time to observe. That was literally all they wanted me for, was to put me in a position where I can see what was going on. And if I elected to engage with what was happening, that's fine. But if I wanted to stay there, this is the place where you can be and simply observe and not be bothered by anybody else who's here. They're not here for you. Don't expect that. And so that actually is pretty much the experience I had when I went for the first time. So,
yep.
Yeah.
So what's up, BJ? You're muted, bud.
Oh,
there
hey.
you go.
Oh, hey, can y'all hear me well?
Yeah, we can hear you.
We can hear you.
Okay. All right.
Hey, BJ, do me a favor. Do me a favor, real quick, BJ. I'm sorry to interrupt. Do you see settings down there at the bottom of your screen?
Yes.
Click that, and then click audio.
Make sure you have the right mic on.
Yep.
Okay.
And then right there where it says mic, you'll see a little drop-down bar. Click that drop-down bar.
Yeah, low definition, standard definition. Oh, that's camera.
Yeah, on your left-hand side of settings, you'll see where it says audio.
Okay, I changed it.
There you go. That's a lot better.
Okay.
There you go.
I have an actual mic, so. All
yeah.
right.
No, that sounds much better.
Okay,
yeah.
Good. I wouldn't want people to like, man, I'm turning this off. That guy's got a crappy mic. And is that Dale that usually has sunglasses?
That is Dale.
Yeah.
He is known by his sunglasses.
He's looking cute there. Yeah.
See, that was back when I didn't have the eye issues, so I didn't have to wear it. Even outside, I didn't have to wear it. So
yeah.
Cool. Yeah. It looks like you're in Jerusalem or something like that.
Yeah, that's the Dome of the Rock.
Okay.
But, what's up, brother man? What you got for us tonight?
Last time I was on, only one time, David Russell wasn't there, so he can add into the mix here.
I can remove him if you'd like.
No.
We have that power.
That's true. I heard.
I'll shut down the whole channel.
What?
I do. Yeah, David does pay the bills, but anyway, shut up, BJ. Go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, go ahead, BJ. Sorry.
I want to make more jokes, but I need to hurry because when my wife gets out of the shower, we're going somewhere.
So okay.
I heard the weirdest thing the other day. It's really weird to me. Stand to Reason with Greg Kokel.
Yep.
Okay, that's not too weird. You know, everybody knows that.
Yeah.
He was talking about. I've heard him mention stuff about self-defense before, and like, you know, pacifism is not a Christian option, obviously, and then you should defend people with violence if you have to. I've heard him talk like that, you know, pretty straightforwardly. You know, he's not like go beat people up, but he's definitely not into like, you know, pacifism, period. So I heard him talking about the Sermon on the Mount. He mentioned if someone strikes you on one cheek, turn it in the other. And I've heard some pastors say stuff like, well, in that day, if it's your right cheek, it would be your left hand. So it's really just an insult. So you should just let people insult you. And me and my wife are like, I don't think that's what it means. That doesn't sound like what Jesus is talking about. Okay. Well, I heard Greg Kokel talking about the Sermon on the Mount and talking about that passage.
Mm-hmm.
And he talked about the it must just be an insult because somebody would slap you with the right hand on your left cheek and you turn to the other. It's just a personal insult. It's nothing bad. If the person hits you, you better defend. I heard him saying that. And then I heard him say this. This is really strange. This is a weird thing. He said, in fact, Jesus himself did not turn the other cheek.
Mm-hmm.
And he paused just like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I don't know what he's talking about. So here's the example he gave. Well, first off, I'll give you the scripture and the example he gave. But first off, what do y'all think about that? I've got more thoughts, but what do y'all think about it so far?
I would need context on the entirety of what he was saying there. So that would be my first go-to.
Well,
so
have y'all heard the thing about turning the other cheek doesn't really mean like if somebody's beating you up, it's just an insult.
Yes, I have.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. That's Michael Brown who taught me about that. So that is
Dr. Michael Brown.
Dr. Michael Brown. Yeah.
Oh my God.
True. So I agree with it.
Okay.
That is. I think that's what it's intending to mean there. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
And even if it went beyond a public insult, there is principle to the way that Paul describes it, is living peaceably with all men so far as it depends on you.
So far as it depends on you, yeah.
That depending on you is the line and barrier. And unfortunately, he didn't explain that very much further, and it sounds rather arbitrary. But I think that where it actually lives is avoidable outcomes versus lived countenance that Tyler and I were talking about earlier with Mitch, is remembering that your witness and testimony is attached to your behavior and responses and reactions. And so being aware that God never let wickedness go unpunished forever.
God never let. Okay, good. I can.
So I think if we're going to image God, we would have to have the presence of mind to recognize that there was a 400-year patience, but then there was judgment, right? And so it's like there is a point at which there will be a stop, but there's a line that needs to be crossed, or a patience that needs to be tried prior to simply being reactionary. So I think it's kind of a nuanced thing.
Yeah. After that verse, that's one of my favorite Bible verses recently. Don't lack in zeal, fervent care with the saints. Do not be wise. Do not repay anyone evil for evil. Give careful thought to do what is honorable in everyone's eyes. If possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Friends, do not avenge yourself. Instead, leave room for God's wrath. It is written, vengeance belongs to me, the Lord. Right. I will repay, says the Lord. And then, give your enemy, if they're going to beat you, if they're going to do whatever, and don't repay evil with evil, but evil for good.
Right.
Vengeance is mine, says the Lord. So
yeah.
I'm not going to not turn the other cheek and beat the guy up. I'm going to, vengeance is mine. Okay.
I think on my behalf, right? So I'm thinking about so here's my thing. And again, so I've said this before, I'll say it again. Like, I am a newly baptized member into the Orthodox Church. I don't speak for the Orthodox Church. I'm not clergy. I'm not anything. So if the Orthodox Church disagrees with this, I repent, and I guess I'll change my mind about it, right? But for me right now, where I'm at, my personal opinion is I agree with 100% what you guys are saying. However, I think there are justifiable circumstances in which violence can and even ought to be used, right? We think of the scriptural passage where Jesus tells his disciples to take up a sword, right? That's for their protection, right? And so with that being said, if somebody breaks into my house and has a gun pointed at my daughter's head, you best believe he needs to pull that trigger faster than I can, because somebody's dying tonight, and it's going to be him. You see what I'm saying? Sir. So I'm protecting my family. I didn't go and chase that down. I didn't encourage that. Like, this is totally happenstance from my perspective, and the Bible tells me to defend my family, right? To be the man, to play, like Polycarp, my patron saint, he was told to play the man, Polycarp, right? Now, it's in the context of him getting ready to stand trial before the Roman emperor and getting ready to die, right, for the cause of Christ. But this isn't about the cause of Christ. This is about somebody breaking into my house, right, and wanting to cause me or my family bodily harm. And you best believe I'd do anything for my little girl, right? Both my little girls and my wife. And so if that happened for me, like, yeah, somebody's leaving in a body bag, and it's not my family.
One of the first, I haven't given Greg Kokel the example yet, but how come one of the first thing out of people BJJ? I like that. It's twice the J in the
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah.
Right.
How come one of the first options is the first thing people think of is if somebody comes to my house, you better believe violence against them. That seems to always be. I've always thought protect the family. If you have to use violence, it should be like the very last option.
Mm-hmm.
So
maybe that's not enough. So I read the Old Testament, of course, but we're not under the law of Christ instead.
So I've been trying to step in for a long time now.
Yeah, go ahead, Dale.
You guys just ruined everything. But so number one, I do have a relevant clip of Michael Brown speaking about this, so I want to play that. But the reason
can you just summarize what he said in that? I haven't got to talk to you about that yet, but can you just summarize
more on what Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount right after that? But maybe Michael Brown also addresses that. Okay, go.
Yeah. But yeah, the thing that I was getting frazzled about is, Josh, you were a brother from another mother. You had sunglasses on. You guys kept talking about the Bible. The heck with that. Josh was wearing sunglasses.
This is just a tribute.
There we go. There, you got to wear that for the entire show, and then we'll be good.
Deal.
But yeah, I'm not allowed to play clips anymore. Or
it's not that; it's copyright issues.
Really? So, like, we've had problems with previous shows where I've done it, or
correct? Yeah, we've had not just you. We've had problems with all the episodes that we play clips from.
Okay, so
I haven't talked to you about that. I've been meaning to, but it slipped my mind.
If it goes, we can use other people's YouTube stuff. If it's not,
it's a 2-minute clip.
Yeah, we would have to interrupt every 30 seconds for it not to copyright us.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's good news. So never get involved with YouTube partnership program. This thing is horrible. Because I never have issues. But all right, cool. Yeah. Never mind. But yeah, Michael Brown agrees with everything we were saying. I'll just say that.
Okay. I mean, if you want to summarize like what he said, that's fine. It's just playing the clip is YouTube has issues with.
No, it's fine. We've all said it, so let's just
move
on.
All right, fair enough.
Well, and I think also to your point, BJ, that what Tyler and I'm assuming I can agree with Tyler, because I would say I would have the exact same sentiment. His context was an extreme. And so it would be a last resort. Violence is not the first. Like if somebody knocked on my door belligerent, my first instinct wouldn't be to shove them down the stairs, right? It would be to respond appropriately to what's been present. That means that the peace of the situation relies upon me. However, because I live in a house where my wife and my 2 kids live, the peace that depends on me depends a lot more than me. Because if you were to roughhouse me, that's fine. I can take it. But if you threaten those who are under my care, you will be ended. Just the same as God, the way people would come against his people and said, those who bless you will be blessed, but those who curse you will be cursed. And there's a reason for that. God had put Israel in his care by covenant. And by covenant, I've done the same with my wife and children. And so it is literally my responsibility to be proactive in a way that I wouldn't for merely me. And so that's very contextual. And I think that the last resort thing is very important to emphasize, but that the last resort is still a resort, and people will push to extremes. And in the necessary context, that is when it should come out. And the way that I would put it is, I don't take out my teeth unless it's against predators.
Right. Yeah, that's good.
So I'm not like a pacifist like you might hear, like a Amish person, not do any violence, period, or I think it's Stanley Hauerwas. Just if they're doing stuff to my wife and family, and the only thing I can do is I would never do it. No, I'm not like that. So
yeah. There was a story that I recently heard, BJ. It had to do with these Buddhist monks that were living, I think it was in Arizona, if I'm not mistaken, and they were sitting around one night in their temple doing whatever Buddhist monks do, and these two guys broke in, and so the two guys that broke in thought that this temple was just like there was money everywhere, and so they kept threatening them show us where the money is or we're going to kill you, basically, right? And what these monks did, like, I find super impressive, because me personally, I could not do this. Now, maybe it's not because I'm not sanctified, but this has nothing to do with Christianity. This is Buddhist monks. And they literally, so the guys that broke in, put them in a circle, right? And the Buddhist monks, they didn't try to fight back. They sat there, they prayed, and they were executed. Every single one of them were executed. And so that is something that I don't think the Bible tells us that we must do, especially Jesus. And, like I said, the verse that comes to mind is he tells his disciples, take a sword to protect yourselves. You're getting ready to go out. I'm not going to be with you. You need protection. That's how you protect yourself in this century. I think we don't have swords anymore, or at least I don't think they're very useful. And you don't bring a knife to a gunfight, is all I'm trying to say. But at the same time, go ahead.
Could talk about that verse in Luke, but I'm sure what I would say would be like, no, I don't think that's what it means. But I'm not sure on it either. So.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I can send you some resources on that. That would argue that position if you're interested.
It's definitely an interesting question, though. I like that.
So before my wife gets out and I got to go. So Greg Kokel said, so even Jesus did. I'm appreciative.
It's true, Mr. Westford.
To talk about this with some people.
Yeah.
So thank y'all for discussing all that. Okay. Okay. Now the money one. He said even Jesus didn't turn the other cheek, and I was like, what's he mean? And he said when Jesus was at the trial, and they asked him a question, they talked to him, they do various things, and at one point, the same thing happens to Paul, but it happens to Jesus. At one point, the high priest commands the guy to slap him, and he smacks him, And then Jesus, I think it's in the Gospel of Luke, I think. And Jesus turns to him and says, I have only spoken the truth. And you've asked me questions, I've only spoken the truth. But if I told you the truth, why do you slap me? So see, Jesus didn't turn the other cheek.
Because you're saying he confronted it right then and there in his public trial?
Yeah. I mean, there's a whole thing. He got whipped. He got forced to carry the cross. He got nailed to the cross. No, he actually didn't. He didn't turn the other cheek. Then he beat the Romans up. No, he obviously got nailed to the cross. But I was like, are we using Jesus now as an excuse to say, if you're publicly insulted, that's okay, but you can use violence if necessary? The very next thing Jesus said was, if somebody takes your cloak, sues you specifically, because I just read the well, it was a CSB, so I don't know. Maybe Holman, the Christian Standard Bible. Maybe the Baptists are wrong on this. Maybe it's not sues. If anyone sues you for your cloak, give them your shirt too. Okay, so you got a cloak and a shirt. Give cloak here. Take my shirt too. Well, now you're practically naked, especially in the the Bible times. Whenever usually they might only have a cloak or something. If someone forces you to go 1 mile with them, go 2. That doesn't sound like an insult. Someone forcing you to go a whole mile, and we've heard the whole thing about Roman soldiers can make you carry their pack for 1 mile or whatever. Okay, carry his pack for 2 miles. That sounds like a little more than a public insult between friends. That sounds like somebody forcing you. If a cop came and said, Tyler, you're gonna come and drive my squad car around for an hour or something while I just chill out because I don't want to do work, you'd be like, I don't think so.
Right.
But Jesus says, no, do it anyway. Now that's not a 1-for-1 analogy, of course. Do it anyway. If my friend, if somebody sues me and wants to take my house, I'm like, okay, here, have my car too. Wait, we shouldn't go that far. Jesus didn't say to be a doormat. Did he not? Was Jesus
Well,
not?
and that,
I mean,
that
it
was
sure sounds like it to me. Okay, rant over. What do y'all think?
I don't think Jesus is being literal there. I think it's a parable to basically explain be at peace with all men as far as you are able to.
Yeah.
And so if somebody is saying to me like the squad car thing, right? Now think about this too. Say I'm driving to work, right? And then this guy comes up, because we know what Peter says and Paul, to respect the authorities that God has placed, right? Because he places them for justice and judgment and executing vengeance on criminals, right? So there's a lot of gray, I think. I say that to say this. There's a lot of gray area that the Bible, that we've talked about on the show before, that the Bible does not touch on. Like, it gives extremes and it gives parables and it gives all these different things, right? But for just the normal person that's driving to work, a cop pulls him over and says, "Hey, you're going to drive my car around." All right, well, I'm trying to provide for my family, and that's what the Bible tells me to do too. So now I've got a choice to make. Do I provide for my family, or do I do what this douchebag wants me to do? Like, I would say no, I'm going to go provide for my family, right? Because that's what the Bible tells me to do. So I think there's a lot of gray.
Well, there's so Tyler, let me just jump in too, because
yeah.
we're talking about the Sermon on the Mount, right? So
Mhm.
There is a huge cultural backdrop that a lot of people exclude when they read the Sermon on the Mount. When Jesus is talking about like a lot of those things, there's a context, or there was a wrong that the Jewish people were extorting when it came to when it came to each other and how they violated the law. Right? So when turning the other cheek, there were petty feuds, there were insults, they were insulting each other like that, and that is present there. So it's not he's not speaking to the whole issue of nonviolence and violence. He's giving you specific things that are dealing with that cultural context at that time. Just like there was a big the whole eye for an eye thing, right? They were abusing that because they were basically getting blood feuds, participating in blood feuds over there. And he's like, no, stop. You are doing wrong. So he's addressing specific things, and you can see that in his language when he starts using agriculture to help relate to them the certain things that he's trying to make a point on, or fishing. So those are also present in the Sermon on the Mount. Those have to be taken into consideration. I did a really good Bible study on this, and one of the sources that I used was from the it was a Trinity Bible study on Sermon on the Mount, not my school, but a separate website. They had a very good breakdown of the historical, the social and cultural aspects of what were actually going on in ancient Israel during the first century at that time, that they got from other historical sources. So I would also look into that as you're doing a study on the Sermon on the Mount, because it explains a lot. It explains why Jesus is talking about certain things, and it also meshes with how Matthew wrote, because he also does this with the temptations of Jesus, right in the chapter before, where he actually is using Old Testament things to kind of give you what Jesus was thinking about, like the whole turning bread into or stones into bread, and how every man should not, lives on the word of God, right? So that comes from Deuteronomy 6:14. You can see what situation is going on there to get what Jesus is talking about. And then a deeper truth beyond that is basically Jesus saying, I'm not breaking this fast. I'm going to rely on God, even if it means my death. And you're like, whoa, that's deep, that's powerful. And Matthew does the same thing when it comes to the Sermon on the Mount. He uses a lot of the what's going on in the times, how it relates to the Old Testament, and you have to be able to pour that into the text as you exegete the text to be able to get that full understanding.
And I think it's relevant also, BG, the fact that your pushback was specifically, Jesus seems to be telling us to be an extreme personally. Like you kind of, I think it was kind of an irony or a jest that he's called it a doormat, but it's like I said, if I was talking about just me people wrong me and backtalk and be disrespectful, I work in a place every day where people will mouth off to you or insult you, or as you're walking up the door, somebody who's really still very high on something will try to talk to you in a way that's derogatory and inflammatory and antagonize you to get you to react in a particular kind of way. And if they were to disrespect me, right, or even if they were to try to strike me, even my boss, my job has a strict no tolerance policy for violence against the people at the mission, right? But there is a line that's drawn there because of the fact that because my job is a religious organization, right? And so part of what we understand that rule to be exercising is not just do no harm outwardly. It's also understand your actions reflect your witness, and you represent what you are involved in. You're participating in this organization as an employee. You represent this organization as an employee, just as Christ is saying, if you're following me, you represent me as a member of my kingdom, as an imager of my Father. And if you're going to do that, you need to recognize that your reactions and responses are equally a visual or a witness for your person, which is a reflection of the one that you claim to have allegiance towards. And so I think that it's relevant, and it is important to notice that that's one of the reasons why Jesus seems to be explaining this extreme. But at no time during that episode or that explanation that he's giving does he say, if someone strikes your wife in the face, right? He never says if somebody steals your children's coat. Like, he doesn't give an example of someone else being wronged, right? And so the question would be, is pacifism supposed to extend itself into your non-action when evil is going on, or should you reflect God in stopping evil actively with intervention, which is a very different circumstance? And so if it is, insofar as it relies upon me, I can be martyred, but no, my family will not be simply beaten, maimed, raped, or harmed simply by my inaction because of some moral platitude. There's no way that I can justify that with scripture at all.
I like the difference that you're making.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think I can agree with it. I wish,
okay, fair enough.
I really, no, this is like, well, BJ, now you're talking back to God. Why did God specifically say, okay, you yourself, take it this way? But then he doesn't mention that with families. The only things mentioned with families, like, he never mentions, like, but defend your family if you need to. Like, that's never really brought up or mentioned. And then that makes me think about stuff Jesus, like, well, my family's everybody. And then I'm like, well, that sounds a little too, I don't know about all that. But it would have been neat to get some instruction.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking, like, Proverbs. Okay, Old Testament Proverbs. I don't recall anything about that in the Proverbs either. I don't recall anything about that in the Old Testament. The only thing I recall is, like, we're going to go to war against these people and kill everybody. And it's like, wait, that's a little bit of different context. I think.
Right.
Than defending your family. There's a thing in the Old Testament about if a guy breaks in and it's daylight and you hurt him or kill him, well, you're in trouble too. But if it's at night and you strike him and kill him, well, you can't be faulted for that. I'm like, well, hey, there's a perfect example of you need to take it in context. But it doesn't say if the guy breaks in and threatens your family and you let your family get slaughtered, then your life will be taken from you. Like we never see it the opposite way either. If a guy comes in, you better. So like I wish.
Come on, John.
Address that, Sense with a C, huh? I'm sorry.
No, you're good, BJ. I saw that, and I'm sorry. I just had to.
No, it's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, so
I don't mind.
This is very helpful. This has been the most helpful conversation on this. I guess, yeah. I've asked about this online, and all I get is people saying the first part, well, you wouldn't let your family get raped, would you? And I'm like, I'm trying to get beyond that,
Right.
People like to.
I hope the distinction that I was drawing made sense of that.
Yeah. Say that again.
Mr. Yeah, we can hear you. What's up, Mr. Westford?
Hey, how you guys doing? I'm doing good.
Doing all right. Welcome to Faith Unaltered, bud. It's good to have you.
Yeah. Thank you, man. Glad to be here. I was going to say to BJ, like you said, like well, what if my family is going to get raped? Like, people love to, whatever you're discussing, especially if it's like political, they love to throw out like the most extreme case that would be like an exception to the rule typically when they're trying to talk about the rule. So I understand what you're talking about there.
I think Josh mentioned that earlier about these can be extreme cases. So yeah.
Right.
Okay.
I'm an Orthodox Christian, so like a lot of this is, you should be talking to your spiritual father, and everybody's going to have potentially different prescriptions from their spiritual father, different things on their heart and their conscience, and a lot of stuff situational. If we're talking about pacifism, I grew up in a very like normie conservative Protestant home, and I became like a punk rocker by the time I was like 15, and I was into anarchy. I was reading a bunch of books and listening to all these punk bands. And I was really into the ethos, and I was a Protestant. It was like all about straight edge and pacifism, and we had our texts in the Bible that we would cite. Turn the other cheek, and those who live by the sword die by the sword. And I mean, there's examples in the Orthodox Church of saints who were pacifists, or they themselves practice pacifism. Like sometimes it's part of their repentance. Like Saint Moses the Black, he was in a monastery. I believe he's the abbot of the monastery, and brigands were going to come and kill them all. And all the monks started fleeing, and they're like, "Abbot Moses, why are you? What are you doing? You need to come with us." He's like, "No, I lived by the sword. I died by the sword." And he stayed behind to be killed, and that's what he was led to do, and that's how he was martyred. And but again, I mean, you'd also hear, your spiritual father would tip. My spiritual father says, like, don't have a martyr spirit and go try to get yourself killed or anything. Like, don't try to put yourself in a situation. But right. I mean, it's with spiritual advice for you yourself. That can be different, and you can even hear spiritual fathers or fathers in the church give things that sound totally contradictory. Like one example, a lot of spiritual readings that you'll have is do your prayer rule every day, no matter what. Always make sure you do it, even if it's a vain words and you're not even present mentally there. It's better to be doing it than just be laissez-faire about it. As long as you're trying, that God will count that to you. And other people you'll read in the Orthodox Church will say, you shouldn't have vain repetition. You shouldn't pray like that. It's better not to pray than to pray vainly like that. And I think that's true. Both of those are true, but it depends on who you are and your spiritual father giving you that prescription. So with pacifism, like when to act, when not to act, self-defense, I mean, there's all of the different contexts and situations you could be in. If it's just you walking down an alley you shouldn't be in anyways, and there's muggers on one side and the other side of you, I mean, that's a different context than I'm in that alley with my family. That's or if I'm a soldier, like in the Orthodox Church, there's soldier saints, warrior saints. Even we have I don't know what everybody's background is here. I might just be preaching to the choir, and tell me to shut up whenever. But
no, you're good.
Soldiers would defend their homeland. I have a really good quote. I can pull it up later. I don't have it here while I'm driving, but it's basically, I think it's a pagan asking a saint, why do you have warriors? Why do you have people defending you? Like, isn't that against your God's teaching? And he said, individually, yes, we shouldn't commit murder and we shouldn't do harm that's unnecessary, that we shouldn't do. But as a community, when there's brigands from the outside trying to come in and violate us, we believe that there's no love greater than laying your life down for a friend, and that's what these soldiers are doing. And even when they're defending their homeland, they're typically excommunicated for a number of years. Even that's not to say that what they did was wrong or it wasn't justified from a human perspective. You were defending your family, you were defending your homeland. But I like to bring up like Kyle Rittenhouse, how he put himself in a situation, and I've seen a lot of the footage. He was there. Had EMT experience. He was trying to do good, but he had a weapon, and maybe that provoked and all the different things. But he did kill, I believe it was 2 people.
Yep.
And I saw tons of conservatives being like, "I wish he got more. I wish that he took more down. He's an American hero." And I'm just like, I don't know. I mean, even if what he did was totally justified from a human perspective, like even if it's totally justified, killing somebody damages you. It's gonna have repercussions in your soul. And then I saw him going on this like tour going on all these talk show hosts, and he's like making jokes, and they're kind of laughing about him. Like, this makes me feel real weird. Like, I mean, we should be praying for the people that he killed. I'm not going to say murder. I think it was self-defense. I mean, but it's tragic when people die, and from our perspective, it doesn't seem like they repented. I mean, that's a tragedy. So I think it's a tragedy when Kyle Rittenhouse kills somebody in self-defense. I think it's a tragedy for those people that were killed.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think your advice, Mr. Westford, is spot on, and we've said it, many times on this show as well. Not this episode specifically, but just to reiterate what you said, there are things that are circumstantial in everyone's life. Everything is circumstantial in everyone's life, and there is no greater advice, I think, that has been given so far than what you said about speaking with your spiritual father or someone that you trust in that role, if you're not Orthodox, to get the advice from them and then apply it as the Lord leads you. I mean, there are different things. Sirat brought up Hacksaw Ridge. I'm telling you, from my perspective, unless I was called to do that, you would not see me go into a war with just a Bible. That's just not me.
Yeah.
But he did, and so, I mean, circumstantial is, I think, that is the thing that people tend to forget, and they want to make everything like either yes or no.
Yeah.
Whenever there's more gray area than that. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's
and anybody who wants to. Oh, go ahead. I was going
to say, it's so dangerous to give anybody advice, spiritual advice, especially. I mean, it doesn't have to be pacifism. It can be other things, marriage advice. Like, that's why it's so important to be, go into confession and continually and be in talks with your spiritual father and have him, on the pulse of what's going on, since he can be the one to give you the proper advice. If somebody else only has a certain amount of information, they give you advice, could be the opposite of what you actually need to do. You shouldn't give advice without you're not the doctor,
That's right?
That's
right.
You don't have the medical history.
That's good. Or the experience.
Right. Yeah.
Go ahead, Dale.
What I'm saying sounds on paper.
I just have a follow-up question. It's something I was struggling with for a while back, but so you, Mr. Westford, you were saying at one point that it is okay for communities to get together and use violence or to lay down their lives to protect from an outside, like a bad government, or like the Nazis fighting against Nazis.
Yeah, or the Huns or whoever, the Ottomans.
Gotcha. So what I'm kind of curious, in light of Romans 13, if that's okay, why can't can communities, including Christians, get together and fight against their own government? If their own government, I mean, if you're a German living in Nazi Germany, why can't you fight against, or do you think that Romans 13 is consistent with Christians and communities fighting against their own evil government? I don't know if that makes sense, but would that be okay, or yes? Or no?
I mean, I'd like to personally go through, see if we could find John Chrysostom, exegete that or anything, just so just so we can look at the fathers. But without that, and if it's just going to be my musing, and take that with a mountain of salt. But I would say a difference there potentially is that this is, a group being attacked from another group, another government or whatever, from without. But from within, I mean, we can look at the Soviet Union with the Orthodox Church being heavily oppressed, and there were saints that were martyred and killed they literally just we should pray for the government, we should pray for whoever is in charge, whether it's communist, the czar, and then they were martyred for the government looked at them as, oh, people like you because you're doing all these good works, you got to go. They get, that's subversive, whatever it is. But I think potentially there could be types of resisting the government. I think maybe violence. I would want to see if there's any historical accounts of any Orthodox groups, any Orthodox peoples that have done that. Disobedience, civil disobedience from within. I mean, there's the Romanians. What are those called? The Legionnaires. Have you heard of them? I don't think they were ever violent. It was more like a what would you even call it? They believed in being strong Christians and having strong family values and all these things, because that's what the communists were trying to tear apart. And then they were heavily oppressed from that, but I don't think they were ever violent.
So just civilly disobedient.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I would say is, if we're talking about an oppressive government, a above us. We should be praying for them. We should be praying for those in authority. And no matter what, if it's whether it's the Klaus Schwabs of the world, we should just be. I mean, we should be doing prep and being a man and trying to provide for your family, whatever that is. But more than that, more important than that, it's better to have a solid spiritual life and prayer life and be doing the work that you need to do than, having acreage and a goat or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough.
Yeah, Tyler, anything on from you on this, or?
No, I just agree. And I was looking through the super chats and the chats to get to any audience questions that we have, since we haven't really addressed any so far.
Well, if anybody wants to know more about this question of pacifism versus the context of violence, C.S. Lewis actually has a really great essay that he wrote on this called "Why I'm Not a Pacifist." And so he lays that case out pretty explicitly. He does a great job. One of the main examples he gives was actually how Jesus talks to the soldiers on more than one occasion, and never once did he rebuke them for their jobs.
Right.
So there's something to be said about the way that Christ himself was willing to engage with the reality of human society without having to himself partake in the ugly parts of human society as one of its participants, but instead was there to be an impact towards society, a good infection, so to speak. But none of us would try to be fool enough to think that we have the kind of pull that Christ had, or the kind of purity that he brought to a place. And so where reality smacks us in the face is often our shortcomings, but also the context in which we're humans, we lack omniscience, we have passions, we also have values, but we also have duties. And that's why I tried to distinguish between those things when I was bringing it up, was to say, insofar as it depends on me, you can make me a martyr, but you will not make undue violence to my family if I can do something about it.
Right.
That's pretty much where I stand on that. And if somebody had already completed violence against my family, because this is one of the things that Siraf brought up here. He had said, so if someone kills my family, what do I do afterwards? I am Armenian. The Turks killed 1.5 million Armenians for being Christian in 1914. I'm assuming that's not an anecdote, because you're not like 110 years old, but in general, I understand the sentiment of saying, if violence has already been done, then the premise changes, because there's nothing you can do about it once it's complete. When someone's dead, they're dead. And so your vindication, your revenge that Christ and God calls his own, is not in fact yours any longer. But that's different than defending my family from imminent threat, when it's still something I can do something about. So I'd still think that falls under their relevant distinction, but I didn't want to ignore that since it was still relevant.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like vengeance to me at that point. You know what I mean? Like, vengeance would be like something, I don't know if you guys have ever seen Law Abiding Citizen. Great movie, by the way, if anybody's interested. Definitely not like a Christian movie by any stretch of the imagination. But basically, the people kill this dude's family, Gerard Butler, I think's his name. He's in it. They kill his family, and then the courts let them off, basically, because they paid him off. And so Gerard Butler goes and like literally kills everyone that had anything to do with that case. That's vengeance, right? But what Josh is talking about doesn't seem like vengeance in the moment. I mean, do you guys agree, disagree?
I think I understand. Yeah, I think I agree.
So what was Josh saying as opposed to vengeance? Maybe I missed that.
Basically protecting his family. So if somebody comes in and wants to do harm to his family, like in the moment, Josh is going to protect him. That's not vengeance. I would say in my eyes,
that's a total difference in like disposition of heart. I thought maybe I missed something about Josh saying, after, let's say, like I was at work, I come home and my family's been butchered or something. Like,
right?
Do you go looking for? Is there? I mean, there's going to be so many feelings that, and like I said earlier, when I was a teenager into my early 20s, I was a pacifist, and now I was just a single dude, and now I'm a father. I've got a second one on the way, and it's a lot harder to be a pacifist and an idealist when you have people to lose.
Yeah,
that was my main point earlier on, for sure. So I think we agree. Yeah.
Right.
Welcome, Michael. What's up, man?
Hey, Josh.
There he is.
Hey, Tyler. How's it?
It's good, brother.
Good to see you guys. That's the
How's
Hawaii.
it? You're definitely from the island, bro.
I got my island gear on today. Yeah. How are you guys doing?
Good, man. Good. It's good to see you. I'm glad you made it. So I invited Michael to join us tonight to maybe give a little sneak peek of what is transpiring between us and Glossa House and Proof Text. So
Yeah, right on, man. So yeah, I'm excited about that. So we've been sort of the publishing house been around for about 12 years, yeah, and we've been branching out into various media for a while, and we're kind of maybe a little slow to the game on some of the social media stuff, particularly like YouTube and stuff. But we've been podcasting for a while, and yeah, you guys are putting out good content, and I love the debates that you guys are hosting. So it's like, hey, let's give you guys another platform to air some of your stuff on Glossa House TV, the Proof Text podcast, that kind of stuff. So yeah, excited about that.
Yep. So what that means for our listeners, if you want to listen to us on podcast format. So Michael, what platforms are you guys on? I know you guys are on Spotify. What else is there that people will be able to find us?
Yeah, so we're on about 24 different podcast platforms. Yeah, from Google Podcast to Amazon to Spotify to iTunes, all kinds. I can't even remember. Deezer is the name of one. I can't even remember like all the names of them, but yeah, it's about 24. So yeah, it's pretty exciting to. I was trying to pull up some of those names of those, but man, I can't find them all.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different ones. Like there were podcasts whenever CSG had the podcast before. Like there were podcasts that I was on that I didn't even put myself on. Like I don't know how they get on there, but yeah, like Podbean, TuneIn,
Yeah,
all different kinds of. So, but so for our listeners, we have been being requested now for about 3 months. Well, why'd you guys take the podcast off? Why'd you guys take the podcast off? Right. And now Michael emailed me or messaged me on Facebook. And so this has come together now. And hopefully we will be releasing episodes very, very soon on their podcast. So if you want Faith Unaltered stuff in podcast form, that will be available for everybody that watches or everybody. Not only that, but then you get also Glossa House TV and Proof Text. So all of that stuff that these guys are producing, which Michael, if you want to take some time to talk about what you guys are producing, you guys will have access to all of that as well. So we're teaming up.
Absolutely. Yeah. We release podcast episodes every single day, at least 2 every day, sometimes 3. And so we have, for example, on Monday, we have 3 episodes currently. We have an episode called 3 Things where I just talk about 3 things that I'm thinking about. Usually like Bible study resources, that kind of thing, good language resources. We have Dr. Jen Noonan. She has a second language acquisition podcast that she does on Mondays with us. And then Jesse Orloff has a spoken biblical Greek podcast that he also drops on Mondays with us. On Tuesdays, I have a spoken word, like poetry podcast that I do right now. I just been rewriting each of the Psalms one by one as like modern spoken word poems. So that drops. And then we have also a fallacy of the week episode where I take like a meme or a post that's been floating around social media or online. And I just say, hey, where are the logical fallacies in this? Usually if it's a meme, it's going to have a bunch of logical fallacies. And so just helping people, be able to identify fallacies, name them, that sort of thing. And then on Wednesdays, we have Greek reading where I read sections of the New Testament in Greek. Like right now I'm reading through Revelation, just piece by piece. And then also a Greek vocabulary episode on that day. And then we also have Colton and Devin. They run a podcast called Christ and Classics, where they're looking at all this classical literature like C.S. Lewis, a lot of his stuff, J.R. Tolkien, and Aristotle, and like a bunch of like the stuff way back in the day, Plato, and all this good stuff is from like ancient to modern classical literature, and they're reading those in light of Christ. So from a Christian perspective. So like they just did one on Prince Caspian, the Voyage of the Dawn Treader, so on and so forth. On Thursdays we have a Hebrew readings where I read through the Hebrew Old Testament. We've got a Hebrew vocabulary episode, and then me and J.M. Smith, who runs Disciple Dojo podcast, we have a episode we drop on Thursdays called 10 Questions, where we just look at a Bible passage, a random Bible passage that's probably often taken out of context, and we each get to ask just 5 questions of it, no answers. So kind of like showing people what it looks like to bring a creative edge to asking questions to a biblical text. On Fridays, on Fridays, we have Jesse Orloff and I do a podcast where we look at a passage of Greek scripture. Right now, we're just reading verse by verse through Jonah. We read in the Greek, and then we discuss it for like 20 or 30 minutes in Greek. So we're talking to each other in biblical Greek.
Wow. Nice.
Yeah, so that's fun. Dr. Mario Melendez has an episode on Fridays. He's calling it What's in the Name, where he looks at a name from the Bible, whether it's of a place or a person, and he goes deep into the meaning of that. And then Fred Long and Pat Holly. Fred Long's a professor at Asbury Seminary, and Pat Holly, he's a clinical psychologist. They do a podcast together called Holy Love, and so they're talking about love from different angles. And then on Saturdays, we usually have a Bible study with me and Fred, or we're interviewing another scholar. So those are good. We have a Greek marking episode that drops on Saturdays, which is fun, where Fred looks at just one Greek verse and he's like diagramming it and explaining all the intricacies of Greek. And then on Sundays, we also have 2 other Greek episodes. So it's a lot of biblical language stuff, a lot of Bible study stuff. And so, yeah, you guys bring a lot of nice like theology and philosophy and a lot of good stuff on that side of things. So I think it's good, man. It really is complimentary.
I agree, which is one of the things that, stood out whenever I researched and then talked to you about the podcast that you guys are doing, or multiple podcasts. So y'all look out for that, because that's going to not only give you Faith Unaltered in podcast form, but also open you up to a whole lot of different resources that Michael is putting out daily. And so this is just going to be a good thing all around, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely.
But all right, Michael, is there anything hold on. So let me go back to Mr. Westford for just a second, because he kind of popped in the middle of a conversation. I want to see if there's something that he wants to talk about that he came on, and then we'll move to you. And then if nobody else jumps on here, we'll get to these audience questions. I thank you guys for holding on and being patient with us, but we will get to your audience questions here momentarily. So Mr. Westford, over to you, brother. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about specifically, or just joining us? And you're muted, by the way. But just joining us to throw in your input as well, which is fine. Like, I love it.
Yeah, I mean, nothing specifically. Like, I just heard the pacifism conversation, and I just chimed in on that. But yeah, I mean, I'm down to go anywhere from here.
Right on. Just out of curiosity, you said you're Orthodox. Do you mind if I ask you what parish you attend?
I attend an Antiochian parish.
Okay, right on. Same. We're here in Evansville, Indiana, at St. Ananias Orthodox Church, and so the only one within 100-mile radius of us. So we were like, do we want to drive all the way to Bloomington, or hey, there's one here in Evansville that's like super close, and so we decided to go there. I think it's about 35 miles away from us, but right on. So I definitely am familiar with Antiochian, the Orthodox. So. Right on.
I'm from Nashville, Tennessee, as you can tell through my thick Southern accent that I don't have. But I live in Seattle, and there's so many Orthodox churches here. There's,
really,
throw a stone, you'll hit one around here.
Really, I wish it was that way around here. I really do. But we're talking about. So we began to open a mission, I guess, in Owensboro, Kentucky, and that's kind of like fell off for the time being. I think there are more important issues that our bishop is wanting to address before we go there, but that's still in the works. So evangelism is happening around here, and outreach is happening. So hopefully that can progress here, in the next couple of years. But right on, man, right on. All right, welcome, Andrew. So thank you for joining us as well. And Josh or Dale, I'm going to turn it over to you guys real quick because I've got to go grab something to drink. But I will be right back.
No worries.
Sure. So, yeah, I guess at this point, Andrew, since you're new, do you have like a topic or question that you want to discuss?
Well, first, can you hear me? Because I was trying to put
Yeah,
it
we
in
can hear you.
but
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah.
okay, awesome. No, I was just listening because I don't know. I was just reading about pacifism and been reading a lot about the saints and I'm a catechumen, so in the Orthodox
Okay.
Church, so I'm I'm getting hit with a lot of stuff all at once. But
Yeah.
because I'm coming out of Protestantism, I almost, my natural instinct, because I disagreed so much with Protestantism, is I almost err too much on the side of be ready to fight. But I think there's a lot of category errors that are done when trying to go and parse this out, because the idea that we're supposed to just turn the other cheek and not fight is basically why we're kind of at the place that we're at now in America, because there's a big constraint of 13 and just turning the other cheek. And I think the big thing that I saw was when I think it was some cancel culture thing that had happened, and they were trying to go after someone. It was Ben Shapiro, who I don't agree with on a lot, but they were trying to go after him. Then the guy who went after him, like, some of his tweets came to light, and he was like, "Well, we can just forgive and be the bigger people." And I was like, no, that's because what he had put out was egregiously more like disgusting. And and I like James Gunn personally as a director. I think he's great, so I like him. But that was
his tweets are weird, but his movies are good.
But the point was that he can't, like, he set the rules for this, right? And then Shapiro went and took this too much of a turn, and he's not even Christian, but he took too much of this turn the other cheek thing, and he took it like to a way extreme, right? And the fact that Christians in the West seem to have this idea of just, don't fight on any front.
Wait. Was Ben Shapiro telling? What's the context? Was Ben Shapiro saying, "Oh, you should turn the other cheek"? Is that what he's saying?
He didn't say turn the other cheek, but he was like, we're the bigger people, and he shouldn't lose his job, and so on and so forth. Well, it wasn't Shapiro or anybody at the Daily Wire who was calling for him to lose his job. It was like the public at large, and somebody else went and found public tweets and didn't put them out of context. They literally just put out, these are the tweets, here's the threads, etc., and the public was outraged. And Shapiro Gunn did what you should do if like something like that's going on. He just disappeared, and then Shapiro was like, we can go and we don't have to cancel everybody. We need to be bigger than cancel culture. And I'm like, no, we need to use cancel culture correctly. And
right.
But the Christians who were like taking the Shapiro side on it were like, well, yeah, this is an element of turning the other cheek. And I'm like, no, that's not. It's a complete category error. And we've had that in the West so much so that it's gotten to the point that you as a Christian are in more of danger of having to actually harm someone, take someone's life to defend your family, because we wouldn't go and actually hold people to certain standards that they themselves want no business of.
It's useful to remember too that politics is a very low resolution view of the world and tends to truncate everything and speak in platitudes and forget its place. And so a lot of the time, the social commentators and then the reaction from the public is always going to be this weird parody of itself and not make any real sense in the end. So, I think that you're right, though, that it's not a turn the other cheek thing to say, freedom of speech is you should learn not to be offended. It's like, no, some things are just offensive. They are, but our reactions should be ordinate, and they should be responses rather than reactions. We should be rather thoughtful in how we take our stand for or against things, especially when our words are going to be recorded forever in a place like the internet and leveraged against us at will. We should be very, very careful.
I was late to the discussion here. What sparked the discussion about pacifism off? That's my first question. And my second question is, would I be the only one in here who says they're a pacifist?
I used to say that. Definitely not a pacifist now.
Yeah.
I would say I'm a pacifist in most situations, but ultimately the reason why this came up was because we had a guest from the audience named BJ who came on, and he asked the question about something he had heard being discussed, which was the idea of turning the other cheek. And he was heard that this was a societal distinction about being insulted in some way publicly and allowing that insult to stand and not being reactive. And then the point was made that when there's somebody doing something and it's causing a frustration for you, or something that's causing violence to you personally, or a defamation of your character, or an infraction on your being, that you should be able to absorb that as the mature Christian, or as the extreme that Christ expects you to be, being one that calls yourself to his allegiance. We're then supposed to be responsible for how our witness and our person comes across to other people. And the distinction that I made in terms of pacifism versus turn the other cheek kind of thing was, my pacifism ends where the violence ceases to threaten merely me, because I'm in covenant with my wife, and through her my children, and they are in my care, and it is expected of me to be self-sacrificial to the nth degree to try to keep them out of unnecessary violence's way. And so I would be expendable for their sake in some sense. And honestly, I'd be willing to act in a way that I wouldn't if it was merely against me. And that, I think, is compatible with being peaceable with all men so far as it depends on me, right? Because at some point there's an extreme and there is a reaction that's necessary, but it's not merely to defend myself or my honor, but I would act in self-sacrifice for others.
Right. Gotcha. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, all right. So I think there's a big jump too, from being slapped on the cheek and using that analogy. There's a huge jump from that to like something like war, right? Like to me, like
That's
trying to
true.
compare the two, like that's a very problematic comparison. So I think using the turn the other cheek verse to talk about war or not war, I'm not sure that's the right verse to talk about to look at, to talk about that, right? Now there may be like an underlying ethical principle there that somewhere connects or intersects with the discussion about war, but that to me is like a big logical leap. Also, the question that you often hear is, and so if someone was breaking into your home and trying to hurt your wife and children, would you do nothing? Well, no, I wouldn't do nothing. I would try to do something that wouldn't result in a fatality.
If
But I
possible.
wouldn't do nothing. And it's also a huge jump from that discussion to war, which often happens. Those are two completely different things. I I don't think they're valid comparisons, at least in my book.
Yeah.
I think you would agree with a lot of what was said previously in the episode. Sorry, Dale, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, sorry, I came in late. Yeah.
No, you're good. Go ahead, Dale.
Just to contribute my perspective, so like I'm totally on board with what Andrew's saying 100%. I think that, look, so the Bible's clear that we aren't to repay insult for insult in a spirit of vengeance or anger or bitterness and that sort of thing. But there are times when it's edifying. It's being done, so for example, when people are abusing this teaching of turning the other cheek, and that this is leading to harming other people and stuff, as we've seen with cancel culture and these crazy woke people and what they've done. I think it is proper to give them a dose of their own medicine for the edifying purpose of teaching them what what they are doing to others and the harm that they're bringing. So long as we're doing that for that edifying purpose, and it's not like a permanent thing, it's not out of vengeance. We just want to teach them that lesson, and then we can hopefully come back to the normal status kind of thing, right? And restore restore the harm that they've done to society. So in certain cases, yeah, it is appropriate to like show them what they're doing is wrong, and unfortunately sometimes the only way some people can learn is by giving them a dose of their own medicine. So yeah, I think I'm on board with Andrew on that.
For sure.
If I could make just like one last point, and then I have to jet to go into work, I'll still be listening.
Yeah, no
of
worries.
course.
It's kind of a two-pronged point, but I forget. I was arguing with somebody online before I got banned from Twitter, and they were, well, how can God be love and want to kill people, et cetera, which, it's a complete poisoning of the well on their part. But my retort was, like these state troopers in Texas who find kids who are in trucks, and every once in a while you'll see a story where somebody got killed while they're rescuing these kids. Was that violence and that taking of life that the cops did, was that not love for the children that they're trying to protect? So like love and violence are not separate. Like they're synchronized. I mean, that's basically what orthodoxy is trying to attain theosis, which is, being able to participate in the energies of God. And we're in this earth now, so we have to participate with the energies of God in the earth, as we are. And then, so on the second point of that, there's a story about a pro-life lady, Protestant. So, obviously I don't agree with a lot of what they think, but he was praying outside of a clinic, and they put her in prison. And there's a whole bunch of other people who are like looking at 11 years in prison. I think she got 5, and she's like 70. Well, and if what I was talking about with Ben Shapiro is the norm that the quote unquote Christian right is going to take, that, well, we don't repay evil for evil. That's not repaying evil for evil. If we end up having something, by God's grace, we have a successful election season, and we get people who are actually believe in the rule of law as the rule of law is established, then there are going to be a lot, and I mean a lot of people who are shutting down bridges, who are shutting down roads, and we're going to take the DOJ and we're going to throw the book at them. Not because we hate them, not because we hate their policies or anything. We are going to go and say, you are causing actual damage to people. They shut down bridges and ambulances can't get through, and they won't let, they just sit there and won't let them through, which is a whole other question. Should an ambulance just run over somebody because you have to take care of the life that you're entrusted with? Like, me, I'm kind of the mind, the ambulance didn't ask to be put in that situation, but they were asked to take care of this person. And if you're in the way of that, you put yourself there, not them. That's neither here nor there. What I'm saying is, if we don't get a handle on this whole pacifism, turn the other cheek, you let them slap your cheek, you turn. And another thing is, a slap is not a punch. Okay, a slap is there's a reason it says slap, not punch, because a punch is to like actually inflict damage. A slap is to inflict insult. Men slap each other as insult, not because they're actually trying to do damage. But
there's also another cultural element there, like, and I don't, as a New Testament scholar, I don't know. I'm sorry to interrupt, but like how accurate this is, but there's a strand of thought that says it was actually a backhanded slap, which in first century Rome was the way of showing, like if you did an open-handed front slap, then that's cause for fighting, but a backhanded slap was more meant for exactly what you just said, disrespect. And so this was just shaming, rather than meaning to cause violence to.
Yeah, but I mean, even if we just put it in today's context, as a guy, and before I found orthodoxy, I kind of lived a degenerate lifestyle. I'd been in bars and stuff, and been in a couple fights, but I didn't get into a fight, like a fight until fists were swung or there was somebody else who needed somebody to intervene. But the idea of if somebody slapped me, I'd probably just be surprised, and then I'd be like, that was weird, because a slap
right.
I don't think you need cultural context to go and say a slap is not a punch. Like that's the thing. But back to the idea of this pacifism and turn the other cheek and taking it way too far, is that if we do get a good outcome in the coming year, like, we need to push our legislatures and stuff to actually hold these people to the kind of ridiculousness that they've been, because there are actual real consequences for people shutting down a bridge so people can't go
Right.
and try to feed their family, and ambulances can't get through and help people. And there's actual real world damage from people try to firebomb a pro-life center, like, but they do nothing about that. And when they do, it's like a slap on the wrist. And if our elected leaders, which it seems like people who are running, most of them are more of an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth guy. I'm not saying that that's what you should do, but it's 5 times better than what we've had so far. So, I mean, I feel, again, this could be my Protestantism, because I bucked against that real hard, even when I was Protestant. Like, I feel like it's easier to tone down somebody who's ready to go kill someone. Like, if their motive is righteous, not because killing somebody just as vengeance is not righteous, but the motive to want to go take care of somebody who has done extreme harm to you so that they don't do it to someone else, it's easier to tone that back than it is to go and get somebody who's just like, oh, well, God already preset everything in motion and it's just going to happen. And so I just wait and hope that I'm in, that my number's never called. Like, it's a lot easier to tone somebody back than it is to get somebody to stop being lethargic.
Right.
And like I said earlier, if anybody wants to know more on this and have a really good cogent answer for this difficulty with the nuance that's involved, I recommend Lewis's essay, Why I'm Not a Pacifist. He does a really great job laying out all of these cases, while he himself, as somebody who's been to war before, was not somebody who would support frivolously just being violent or trying to act out or picking a fight in a bar or any such thing. He's very, very particular and actually used a lot of scriptural support for his view as well. So I highly recommend that to anybody who's still curious.
All right. Well, thank you for letting me hop on. I got to go head into work. So
absolutely, Andrew. Have a good night at work, man.
You too. Thank you.
Yes, sir. All right, gentlemen, that was good. So this has been a very, and for me anyway, like, I haven't thought about this for a long time, and this has been this segment anyway has been very enlightening to me, and it's gotten me to think critically about some of these things, because I'm looking at the comments here, and I do. So real quick, guys. So I apologize. I'm going to have to jump off here in a few minutes because I promised my wife I'd only go 2 hours tonight, and so I'm going to spend some time with her. But this conversation can keep going. Dale and Josh, if you guys want to hang around for a little bit longer, I want to answer. So 2 things. So real quick, I want to go to what Sirap said, and then I want to answer one of the audience questions that we got, maybe 2. And then just because I said I would do that, and so I want to be faithful to that. And then if you guys want to pick up where I leave off, then feel free. I see other people coming in now, and so this is good. So you guys might have another 4-hour conversation. We might break the record tonight for an episode, but we'll see. But anyway, so real quick, so to go to Sirap, what he says. Here he says, you're taking a life that could have been saved. You don't know how that person would have reacted if you didn't even harm him just to save them. Ponder on that thought. Excuse me. Save them, meaning your loved ones. And so I'm going to put this back into the context that I was talking about specifically. And Josh, I think you agreed with me on about someone breaking into your house and wanting to off your family at that point. Like, again, so what we're saying is that the last, and I think Josh explicitly said this, the last resort is violence. At the same time, right? If I've got a guy that comes in and holding a gun to my little girl's head, right? I'm going to try to talk that person down, okay? But here's the thing. How do I know if he's going to pull the trigger or not? What I've got to take into consideration is the circumstances at hand right now. And everything is screaming, he's about to kill my little girl. Okay? So do I sit there and try to evangelize this guy? Or do I do something else, right? And I think honestly, and this is just speaking from my heart, guys, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm right, but the last thought on my mind is telling this guy about Jesus right now. Like, that's not even on the board for me at this point. Now, if circumstances are different, right, then, and I get a chance, like we said in the beginning, this is all circumstantial and it's playing out moment by moment by moment, right? And so depending what happens in that context, absolutely I don't want to end this guy's life, right? That's my last resort. But at the same time, I'm not willing for him to kill my little girl or me or my family, because then to go the other way on this street, Sirap, that would end our evangelism that we would do in the future. So now you've got possibly multiple people in your analogy here that will not be saved because he killed us. You see what I'm saying? So this really goes both ways, and I don't think it's, I don't think it's practical. I think in these circumstances, specifically the one that I was talking about in that scenario, you play this out moment by moment, and then at the end of the day, you make a choice. And if he's already screaming at the top of his lungs, "I'm going to kill your little girl" by his actions, then the first thing in my mind is to protect and defend. Like, but that's just me, So again, this is circumstantial and it's based on personality, I really think. But go ahead,
Tyler,
Joe.
I don't think it is just you, Tyler. I think that's actually a universal moral principle that is intuitively understood by most men everywhere, especially when you make it explicit. Like I said, I am in covenant, not just legally, spiritually. I'm in covenant with my wife and my children, and small claims give way to great. I am not in covenant with the criminal who breaks into my home. I am under no obligation to save him like I am under obligation to save my wife and children. If it came to it, no, that person would not be my priority. And that is not wrong for me to say. I don't believe that it's wrong for me to prioritize, because God prioritizes. You could take the premise from the people he was in covenant with. He told Israel, "Those who bless you, I will bless, but those who curse you, I will curse." And he delivered on that repeatedly. And there was nothing wrong with it. He was not evil for that. He is a good God for that. And I believe that that's what a good father does. And I would be reflecting the father that I believe I'm following by behaving in a way that would preserve my family over a stranger. Not that strangers aren't important, but that, again, my allegiance and my order hierarchy of values that are appropriate to me as a ground floor human with no omniscience and no eternal authority, that person's life is not in my hands in the same way it's in God's hands, but my family's life is in my hands in a way that their life is not in my hands.
Right.
That's where that becomes the most relevant for me. And I think that you, Tyler, are not alone in that at all.
Yeah.
I think that is one of the
I
most
agree.
shared universal intuitions of all men everywhere.
Well, it's kind of like Andrew was saying, right? Like the people that stands in the middle of the road that blocks traffic, like you put yourself in that situation, right? Now, I'm not saying it's cool to run these people over, but just from my personal, perspective on things, and you hear it all the time on the show, perspective is everything, right? I'm not going to stand in the middle of an interstate because I know what happens on interstates, and that's big hunks of machinery come down there barreling at 70 miles an hour. I can't be like, "What are you doing?" whenever that happens to me standing in the middle of the road. You see what I'm saying? Like, it's just people nowadays, it seems to me, and again, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm right on this, I don't know, but I think that people like really, and not in every circumstance, but the victim is put in a level that they were never intended to be by our modern society, and people actually get blamed for doing what they were going to do anyway. And even if somebody stupid is going to do what they do, does that make sense? Like, the person that travels down the road at 70 miles an hour shouldn't be held accountable for hitting someone or a mass group of people that are there, putting themselves in that situation. That just seems baffling to me. You know what I mean? But I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Anybody else got any thoughts on that? Or
Well, May, like what you said with getting into traffic and trying to protest or whatever, it's just play stupid game, win stupid prizes. Sounds like to me.
Right. Like, why the middle of the road? I mean, I don't know. Anyway,
I think
Michael. All right, go ahead, Mr. Rush.
I was gonna say if we try to, because it's always we've only been harking on that one hypothetical. Let's change the hypothetical a little bit and say, we're not in a place of power where, okay, I have the gun on my hip, I can try to take aim and fire and try to save my family. Like it's let's say you get knocked out in the middle of the night and you wake up and you're bound and your family's bound, and it's okay. I don't know. It's a Muslim, whatever, and it's like deny Christ or I'll kill your family one by one. It's like, I think I would never want to be in that situation, but I think part of what being a Christian father is to prepare your children and equip them to where they'll have the spiritual strength to never deny Christ. I mean, even though I think there's repentance and all that, but I mean, the martyrs didn't deny Christ when their life was on the line, when their family life was on the line, their friends,
Mhm.
and they didn't have the power to defend them. It was, they're already got the rope around their neck. So it's easy to say on paper. It's hard to do when you're actually in that position, especially when it just happens to you and you didn't expect it. But
Right.
it's when there's a lot of, do you actually have the power to do something? Do you have the fortitude to do it? Do you have the training? Are you able to withstand pressure? I know we can talk about, I would do this and that and this, the moral, but I think we should be sparring and doing things where we're used to pressure so we can actually make those decisions under pressure.
Yeah, that's good. Michael, is there anything you want to add before we move on to some audience questions? Or
No, I'm good.
All right, brother. All right, there's one audience question in particular that I want to address real quick, and then maybe another one. I got to find it again though. But and I know Josh will definitely have some stuff to say on this, and Dale might even get into a debate with Josh on this. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But John Q, taxpayer. What is the strongest scripture that points to penal substitution or penal substitutionary atonement? Would Isaiah 53 be the go-to scripture? Would love your thoughts. So just first and foremost, I think so. Not only that, but Romans 3:21 through 26 here, and this is out of the New King James Version. But now the righteousness of God apart from the law is revealed, being witnessed by the law and the prophets, even the righteousness of God through faith in Jesus Christ to all and on all who believe. For there is no difference, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, being justified freely by his grace through the redemption that is in Christ Jesus, whom God set forth as a propitiation by his blood through faith to demonstrate his righteousness, because in his forbearance God had passed over the sins that were previously committed, to demonstrate at the present time his righteousness, and that, he might be just and the justifier of the one who has faith in Christ. And then I think also I would add 1 Corinthians 5:21 to that. Let me pull it up real quick. And I think it's 5:21. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong on that. Let's see, 5:20. Oh, why didn't it pull up? Hold on just a second, guys. 1 Corinthians 5:21. Oh, I'm sorry, 2 Corinthians 5:21. Excuse me. For he hath made him sin, so this is King James Version, for he hath made him to be sin for us who knew no sin, that we might be made the righteousness of God in him. So Isaiah 53, 2 Corinthians 5:21, and then Romans 3:21 through 26 is, I think, the go-to passages. Josh, would you add anything else to that, or?
Honestly, that was spoken like a good Calvinist. I think you covered the bases, but I think if we added also the context usually is used, the exchange of Isaac for the ram in the thicket is another one that I hear used really often for that. And sometimes in a pinch, I've heard people, and maybe even you, Tyler, reference Genesis 3 with the granting of the skin, the garment of skin, that God would have made a sacrifice to cover Adam and Eve as an exchange and an atonement and so forth. So there's analogies that are made there as well. But I think you covered pretty much all the bases. Those are the main go-tos. Yeah.
Right. And to my knowledge, so just speaking from, as a member in the Orthodox Church, there are differences of views within the Orthodox Church that I've heard specifically promulgated by people in the Orthodox Church. So some hold to PSA, others do not. To be honest, given some of the I'll put it like this. I used to hold PSA as like the umbrella with different models of the atonement under it. So I've always held to Christus Victor, things like that. If anything has changed for me now, like I would put the restored icon model up top under the umbrella. And PSA is kind of a question mark for me at this point, because I know the interpretations that people like that would not hold to PSA. I know those interpretations of those passages that I just mentioned, and I would lean toward that because of the misconstruing. And Michael, you're a Greek guy, so you should know this. And I don't know where you stand on PSA, so like we might get in a debate. I don't know what's going to happen here in just a second. Well, we won't, because I got to go here in a minute. But I would love to hear your thoughts on hilasmos in Romans and hilasterion. And also, I think that people, given the context of Exodus and Leviticus, I think people misconstrue that nowadays that would hold to a PSA model. But I would definitely put a restored icon model as that umbrella, whereas PSA would be kind of like a maybe, but I lean not. It's not a hill I'm willing to die on or anything like that. So I could be convinced one way or the other whether PSA is an actual model of the atonement. I just don't think it is, because I think, if we're talking about atonement specifically, I have more problems with I have more problems with God the Father pouring his wrath out on his Son than I do with Christ being a substitute for us. And so if we take away the penal aspect of this, like I think I can affirm that Christ is a substitute for us, right? In a representative type of way, like he represents us. But if we go then the extra distance to say that God the Father pours out his wrath on the Son, God the Father damns his Son to hell, just some of the ugly, ugly things, anti-Trinitarian things that I've heard people say that hold to this model, I think that's pushing it way too far. But to answer your question, John, those would be the passages I would have went to as a Calvinist and as someone that held PSA under that umbrella, or as the umbrella with all those models underneath. But Michael, I'd love to hear your thoughts on Hilosmos and Hilosterion.
Yeah,
before that, can I just say goodbye, you guys? I gotta get going.
Oh yeah, Mr. Westford, it was great to have you. And thanks for finding the channel. Like that was awesome, man. Yeah, welcome.
Yeah, I'd love to hop on again sometime, you guys.
Absolutely, anytime. All
right, peace out, you guys.
All right, see ya.
Well, yeah.
Go ahead, Michael.
I was gonna say something besides those two Greek words. I don't know. Maybe this is a sort of controversial view, but I'm kind of in a space where I certainly don't think one analogy or metaphor or a model of atonement tends to capture the entire essence of what happened in the Christ event. So it's kind of like the four Gospels. You need the different vantage points and perspectives to sort of get at it from different angles and to get a fuller idea of it. And so my frustration is that we sort of, with penal substitution, for example, is locking into one model, and that becomes the be all end all, right? It's like the discussion ender. Whereas I'm thinking like, there are various models of atonement in the New Testament itself. I mean, we have lamb language and imagery. We have ransom language and imagery. We do have judicial and forensic language and imagery, and so on and so forth. And so I think we sort of need a multitude of models to get at what it is that happened in the crucifixion, resurrection, ascension. So I'm not willing to sacrifice, pun intended. I'm not willing to sacrifice. I'm not willing to sacrifice all of the models in exchange for one. And so I'd rather have a multitude of ways to talk about this. And then this also means that I think we should still be coming up with culturally, I guess, appropriate or culturally significant models of atonement that still fit in various cultures today. So is there a model, for example? So if you guys have heard of kintsugi, that like kintsugi art, have you guys heard of this? No,
I have not.
This like Japanese practice, I think it's Japanese, where like say you got a beautiful vase or vase, however you say it, right, and it shatters. Well, the kintsugi artist is going to essentially gather all the pieces back and try to put this vase back together, but it fills the cracks with gold. Yeah. And so in the end, it becomes this restored thing that has a new sort of beauty and value to it, right? And I think that is a good model. And so, another way to talk about what happens to us, as we are, saved by Christ, for example, we're this broken thing, and he's rescued us and salvaged us and put us back together and made us something new. But yeah, so my point is this: I think we still need to keep developing models and in coming up with language to describe what happened in the Christ event, because no one thing gets at it on its own. So in one sense, then I think all the debate over penal substitution is kind of a distraction, because, well, let's talk about that, but there are so many other models that we need to be talking about too.
Agreed. And we've talked about that 100 times on this show, that do not stick with one model of the atonement, especially like modern day models of the atonement, that yes, some of them go back way far back to I believe the apostles. But don't get stuck on one, because Christ accomplished multiple things, and not only in his death, right? Like that's kind of emphasized in Western Christianity specifically, but in his life and in his resurrection, all of that goes together in Christ's mission and what he accomplished while he was here on earth, and even and even afterwards, right? What is he accomplishing now at the Father's right hand? Intercession for us mainly. So yeah, the atonement work is, I think, spread out over his life, death, resurrection, and ascension.
Yeah.
But anybody else want to comment on that before we go to my last question? And I do want to welcome the newest one of our guests here, Osuki. I think that's the way you pronounce your name. Forgive me if I'm wrong. You can correct me. But welcome, Osuki. You're muted, by the way. If
made him wait too long. He's offended.
I did. He's done. Like the rapture happened and Osuki got caught up, and we didn't, guys. So, but most of our audience is still here, so that means they didn't either. So, what does that say? We're bad leaders, I guess. That's what it says. All right.
The true church, after all.
Right. Well, yeah.
Well, we're raptured, so.
Right. Well, with Osuki, we'll wait, and then, but while we're waiting, I'll move on to my last question I want to address. And Michael, I'm sure you'll have some things to say about this, because I'm going to go to the Greek also. But where'd it go? Dude? I had it I had it starred. It was about Romans 4:5. It was about Romans 4:5, and I forget what he said. I
saw that too. It was present God justify us presently, I think was something like that.
Right. And I thought like that was going, or in the question, from what I remember, you're right, Josh, it had something to do with the present. I thought present tense of the justifying there, and if that gives precedent for God to justify people that have not yet believed. But I was going to address the present aspect of that. But anyway, we'll do that. Let me pull up my screen. But yeah, I don't know. I started, and now it's not on the starred comments. So I don't know if I accidentally clicked off of it or what. But anyway, we'll go to Romans 4:5 just real quick, and then I'll say some things about that. And then we can go to Michael. And then, guys, I've got to bounce after this. And so let me share my screen. One sec. I don't know. I'll just do this. All right, Dale or Josh, can you guys pull that up for me? Perfect. All right. Okay, but so Romans 4:5, I'm reading out of the Eastern Orthodox Bible, the New Testament, and then I've got the New Testament patriarchal text of 1904 up here on the side. So basically, for those who don't know, the Greek Orthodox Bible, the New Testament, this is what this was translated from. And so this is the New Testament patriarchal text of 1904. That's a translation. So this is the translation of that. So with that being said, Romans 4:5, but to the one who does not work, but believes in the one who justifies the ungodly, it is faith that is accounted for righteousness. But if we... Yeah, somebody want to talk?
No, you're
okay,
good. You're good.
My bad. I thought I heard somebody want to come in. I'm not watching StreamYard right now. Like I'm on Logos. So if somebody wants to jump in, just jump in and cut me off. That's fine. But okay, so now to the one not working, but believing. Notice this is a present, right? And I would argue that both the present here and the present in logizete is describing this ongoing process. So for those who have not watched, so I'm not just trying to pull this out of its context, but we went over in our most recent episode on justification between Father John Whiteford, Dr. Bo Branson, and then Wesley Todd and Lucas Curcio from Method Ministries. We just had an informal debate / dialogue between those guys, and Romans 4 and 3 was brought up. And so I went through that and made a case that not only in Romans 4 here, but in Romans 3, the use of the presents and the futures signify that justification is an ongoing process and not just a once instantaneous type of, justification. You're justified by faith in the sense of a legal declaration that Lucas and Wesley was arguing for, which because of that, they had to then argue for the second aspect of justification that is ongoing, that maybe these texts would describe. But definitely like texts like James 2 would talk about God justifying a person by their works in a secondary notion and not this legal forensic justification. I just don't see the conflation between the two, and I would put them as an Orthodox Christian that yes, we're justified by faith, we're justified by works, and both of those are an ongoing thing because we all agree that one has to be continuously in Christ in order to be justified, and that process is ongoing. But I think, in the Greek here, the presence and dealing with aspect, and if we understand that because these are used in the present, and this is first year Greek for anybody that doesn't know this, but there is a sense in which verbs in Greek will show more of an aspect relation between what's being said rather than a time significance. And so just because a word is used in the present doesn't necessarily mean it's happening in the present, though if it's an indicative, it usually does. But anything other than an indicative, and even indicative verbs and participles, have this sense of what we call aspect. And so if the verb is used in the present, it's usually not always, but usually saying that this is an ongoing action, whereas something like an aorist, for example, would indicate that this is an undefined aspect or even a one-time, kind of like if you use the example, the bat hit the ball, like that's a one-time instantaneous action that an aorist, not a present, would more likely be used to describe there. But that's my quick answer to that. But if anybody else wants to jump in, go ahead.
Tyler, while you have that Greek thing, because the accounted for righteousness is past tense, at least in the English. I don't know if that translates
right
or not, but
right. Logizete is present here in the Greek. Mm-hmm.
So accounted is in the present tense.
Correct.
In the Greek, you're saying. Okay,
yep.
But that's just the 1904 Orthodox patriarchal text. Do you know if that's in the present in the original manuscripts and stuff, or
I can find out.
Do you know anything about that, Michael?
Yeah, if you guys I don't know if I can share a screen.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I want to introduce you guys to a really good site to look at that stuff. Very user friendly, but how do I do that? How do I share a screen? Do you gotta let me?
You go to present at the bottom of present. And then it should give you the option to share your screen.
Yeah.
Your tab.
Let me show you. We can actually look at manuscripts really quickly if you want to do that.
Do it. While you're pulling that up, I'll just say this. So I've got three, or I don't know if my screen's still being shared or not, but I've got the SBL edition and then the Robertson Pierpont Byzantine edition of the Greek New Testament also pulled up, and nobody is listing a textual variant here. So that tells me that if they're not listed, like this is present in all the manuscripts that I'm seeing. But Michael, you can go ahead.
Yeah, so you guys can see the screen, yeah? Can you see it? Or, yeah, there you go. So you can see that there are actually some manuscripts with textual variants. So if you look over here, this is the CNTR site. Good Friends of Glosshaus. Alan Bunning runs this. This is an incredible site for numerous reasons. We've developed the Statistical Restoration Greek New Testament, which is simply, we developed an algorithm, Alan has, to sort of score what is the likelihood of a certain word or form being used in a manuscript.
That's so awesome.
You can see that P40, which dates to around 200 to 299, does have a variant there with the Euloizete or Mistos Katacharin, right? Which doesn't appear in numerous other manuscripts. Now, what's really cool about this, by the way, the May is missing there as well. Now, we can look at that and see why. It may be, so what we do is click P40, you can see the transcription there. But what's really amazing is if I go here, is it still, it's switched on me now. Now you can see that manuscript, yeah? There's P40.
Yep.
And you can see what's happening there. And I just got to all that really quick. So, certain parts may be missing because the manuscript itself is in, pretty rough shape.
Sure.
But yeah, there you go. You're able to see what's going on. So it looks like the Loizete is right here. Loizete, that's what it looks like. Anyways, it's kind of cool. So that answers hopefully some of the question about textual variants. But I would highly commend that site to anyone. It's super user friendly and easy to navigate. And you can see what the variants are.
I want to pull that back up real quick. So you said, can you scroll back up, Michael?
Yeah, I can.
To where it says Loizete? Okay, there it is. So in P40, so is what the rest of these are saying? So the 01, 03, 03, 02, are we saying that is not in all of these other manuscripts?
All right, so the first Loizete. Now notice that if we keep going, we get to the second one.
Okay.
So that one actually would have two Loizetes in it. And yeah, you can see some other sort of variants happening here, but you can just hover over a word and it'll sort of give you what's going on with the word. But like this is missing a noon and so on and so forth. So this is a great site. Yeah.
That's all. And what was the name of that website again?
GreekCNTR.org. And it's all free. You don't have to subscribe to anything. It's lightning fast as well.
That's awesome.
You can access any manuscript for any New Testament verse that you want.
That is so cool.
That is amazing.
That is pretty sweet.
Yeah. So I'll stop sharing now. Yeah.
But Dale, does that answer? Because I'm looking then back at the Byzantine, the SBL edition. I only see one Loizete in here.
Yeah.
So that might be why. Okay, very interesting. But yeah, that in these manuscripts that I'm seeing, and from what I saw in there, they were all used in the present. Is that right, Michael?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
And there's widespread agreement across the majority of the manuscripts. That's
right.
Yeah.
Okay. Right on. Dale, does that answer the question?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, so I'm taking your guys' word from the manuscript. Obviously, I can't read them or anything, so I'm just assuming it's the present tense. I just don't understand why did they translate it in the past tense? It counted for righteousness, as though it's something that happened in the past, like in the English. Like why did they translate it that way then?
Good question.
Okay.
I don't know. Like, I don't know, Michael. Would you count? I mean, I don't know. I could get into. So I've got a couple different exegetical commentaries that, like, later on. So after this, I could look at and maybe give you that answer, Dale. But I don't know off the top of my head.
I mean, yeah, I don't know why certain translations do the certain things that they do. I have faith in translations in general that they get the core of the gospel message across, but I have very little faith in the majority of English translations that are out there, just to be straight up,
Yeah.
So as a preacher, I'm a pastor, a full-time pastor, also a scholar, but as a preacher, every week when I preach, I put my own translation up on the screen, right? And the people in the congregation still will have their English Bibles, and they can, push that, they can set that in contrast to whatever I offer. And sometimes it is very big contrasts. But there's rarely a passage that I'm preaching week in and week out that I've translated that I don't find some issues with English translations.
Yeah.
So that's
I agree.
That's kind of a theological issue for me then. Like if I'm required to know Greek to know the proper text, like I just don't think God would do that. I think that we can read the English and get at least the propositional content correct and stuff, but you guys are saying no. In your experience, that's not the case. Like, yeah, that's kind of a theological issue that I guess maybe we could discuss that on the next open mic or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Just on the surface, like looking at that in the Greek, like I would personally translate it as being justified because it is a middle or a passive, and given the present aspect that goes with that, like that just makes sense to me. But I'm sure people translated it for reasons, that I don't know of. And like I said, Dale, I've got a couple different exegetical commentaries, so I'll look into it because there might be something that I'm not thinking about. Because with Greek, and Michael can attest to this, with all the different idioms that could be, like translators have to make a decision. And so, like, I mean, there's just a whole bunch of different things that a present could represent, but that's why you take context. That's why you take manuscripts and different things like that. So translation work is not an easy task, and I commend anybody that's in that field. But I'll look into it, and I'll get you an answer.
Cool. Sounds good.
So, all right, guys, it was great talking with y'all. I've got to run. If these guys want to keep going, then that's on them, and I more than will commend that and give them my blessing. But Michael, it was great to have you on, and I'm excited to be working with you here in the very, very short future. So I'll get that list done and sent back out to you that we were talking about earlier. And we can go from there. And so for our audience, be on the lookout for Faith Unaltered in podcast form, and go subscribe to Glosa House TV on YouTube, and go visit their Spotify Provetext, Provetext, excuse me, and go ahead and then subscribe, because they offer a lot of amazing content. You got a little taste of that tonight with Michael being here, and so that's why I wanted him to come on with us and introduce him to y'all. And so with that being said, if you want to support our ministry, you can do that in the description below. Visit our link tree, and we have a bunch of links down there. So 3 main ones: PayPal, Venmo, Cash App. You can donate to us via any one of those platforms. Also, we take super chat, super thanks on YouTube. And for that, other than that, one of the bigger announcements that we have is this Tuesday, May 21st at 7 p.m. Is that right, Dale? 7 p.m. Eastern?
Yep, that is correct.
Okay. Shabir Ali is coming on to discuss the Quran, specifically in connection with Surah chapter 4 verse or Yoda 157, and that talks about the crucifixion of Christ. Specifically, yep.
Sorry, there is an update. So Shabir actually emailed me tonight, and he was just asking about the format. So I just pitched him, unless he has specific requirements. I just told him what we'll do is we'll do 10-minute uninterrupted openings or thereabouts. So he gives his case, I'll give my case, and then in the Trinity part, he gives his case, and then Dane gives his case.
Okay, I need to let Dane know that. Did you email that to Dane, or?
I don't have his new email. I should
okay.
copy.
I'll send it to you.
But other than that, it's just an informal dialogue. So I haven't heard back. I'm assuming it's good with him, but I'll let you know what Shabir says about that. So
okay, I'll get that to him then tonight, hopefully, and he can start working on that. But yeah, Shabir Ali is coming on to discuss, like I said, the crucifixion and then the Trinity. I'm assuming Shabir is going to bring up the logical problem of the Trinity, but we'll see. I don't know where he's going to go with that. But Dale,
mostly he does scriptural, just from past precedent, but I have no idea. Like I discussed the logical issue with him, but like that wasn't his strength, I would say.
Okay.
So, I don't
know.
All
right. It's going to be a surprise then.
That was years. Yeah. we'll see what he comes up with.
Right on. But check that out. So May 21st, Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern time. And that's really, I mean, we've got other things planned for June. So June 7th at 11 a.m., Dr. Nathan Jacobs is coming on to discuss what we talked about with Dr. David Bradshaw, but from a more nuanced perspective, more focused on God's knowledge rather than his relationship to time and space and how the essence and energies distinction is all formulated within that big O mess. If you want that, Dr. David Bradshaw does a really good job of breaking that down and laying that out in the episode that we just released with him yesterday, as a matter of fact, it was. And so look out for that. But Dr. Nathan Jacobs is going to come on and talk about God's knowledge. And so the emphasis will be on God's knowledge, comparing that to things like dynamic omniscience, open theism, simple foreknowledge, all of that fun stuff wrapped up into one episode. And then we have a friend of mine then coming on June 14th at 7 p.m. Eastern time to talk about his conversion from Protestantism to Orthodoxy. And so that's what I've got planned up. And then other than that, Josh has got Cosmic Corner, Dane has got Three Crowns, Carrie has got Pilgrims in the Holy Land, and we just got a bunch of content headed your way. So subscribe to the channel if you're not. Leave us a like, anathematize the like button this evening, and we will be very, very proud that you kicked his butt to the curb. And so with that being said, I love you guys. Thank you for joining us. Michael, thank you for coming on with us. And to our audience, for all those that joined us, thank you. I will say it. I love you guys. Good night. God bless. Stay like Christ. Christ is risen. See ya.
Yes, man. So yeah, you know what? This has been a really great episode so far. I don't know about you, Dale, but I like Tyler said, this has been rather refreshing because these are some topics that I haven't been talking about with any frequency at all, and coming back to revisit things that I'd thought about just because they interested me but hadn't considered in quite some time, and then to get the amount of like interaction and pushback that was in the comments, this has been really, really fun. Like this is one of my favorite open mic nights so far.
This has been, I think this is the open mic, the best one of all time in terms of audience participation. We've had the most guests actually joining in on the panel and stuff that I can remember, and lots of stuff going on in the chat and stuff like that. So yeah, it's always great. I love the open mic format and hearing, okay, what are the topics that are important to the audience and stuff, and sometimes they give me things to think about or raise issues that I've never thought about before. So yeah, I agree.
Well, we do have a couple more questions here, so I was wondering if you have enough mental steam to go through one or two of these.
Yeah, sure.
Well, it looks like there's only about 2 questions left. It looks like one of them is a kind of compound question. So, yeah, right on. Okay, let's go see. Sam says, that was from a previous comment. What do we think about the bodily resurrection of 1 Corinthians 15? It was pointed out that it looks like there is no fleshly resurrection at judgment except for some to be transformed. So then, what is the sequence of events that happens to us as it regards resurrection? Do we raise again as flesh first, or put on a spiritual body first, whatever that means? I'm actually not particularly an eschatology guy, so I don't really have much to add on that. Do you have anything that you want to take a stab at?
Yeah, in terms of 1 Corinthians 15, the pneumaticos, I think it is in Greek. Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, but the spiritual body is not denying physical. It's talking about spiritual with respect to being oriented towards God, right? The glorious transformed body will be like free of sin and the effects of sin and corruption and stuff like that. It's not saying like, oh, I'm an ethereal ghost floating around. And I did a Bible study and I presented 3 reasons against this. One of this is from Mike Lacona, where he says, look, every time this Greek word is used, it's never referring to like an ethereal ghost floating around or something like that. So, that's just not what's going on. And we know that from 1 Corinthians 15. So therefore, in terms of eschatology, I would say, yes, it is. We will have a physical body when we're raised on Judgment Day.
What do you think, Michael?
I agree with that. Yeah, totally. I'm right there with you.
Right on. Well, I have done a lot of talk on on Cosmic Corner about what spirit is, what it means for a spirit to have body or gain body. But this was a rather particular question that's aimed at a future tense judgment. So I didn't want to necessarily put my foot in it. But I think I agree with you also, Dale. So yeah, thanks for that. That was a good one.
Just to add, like that's so. For example, skeptics will raise. Oh, he's gone. Okay, so skeptics will raise this, like David Campbell Cook or Richard Carrier, people like this, and even I'm not sure if Bart Ehrman did or not, but they'll raise this as an issue, and they try to make this argument. Well, spiritual body doesn't mean like a flesh or a physical body and stuff. And there are entire debates. One of the best ones is from years ago, Dr. Mike Lucona versus Dale Martin from Yale University. And yeah, check out that debate. It's one of the best on that topic specifically.
Cool, right on. So I didn't mean to step away. I just the oven was going off, and I didn't want the beeper to be a distraction.
I was boring you. Just admit it.
So I have looks like just the one more from Dustin S. Says, okay, God only punishes in hell for a while rather than eternity. I'm assuming this was a question that was perhaps aimed at somebody in the audience, but it's relevant to the idea we call annihilationism. It's something that is not necessarily very popular among Christian groups or Orthodox groups, from what I understand, is something that is accepted by the Jehovah's Witness Church, but isn't necessarily adverse to Scripture if we take a sola scriptura kind of approach. If I understand it correctly, annihilationism is kind of the assumption that eternality of the soul of humans is contingent on unity with Christ and therefore with God, so that Christ offers eternity to those who believe, but those who do not believe will perish. And I think that this kind of entails directly that the lake of fire at the end would be something of a deletion pile rather than eternal conscious torment of any kind of that sort of distinction that's going on. I'm pretty sure that's what they're asking. Dustin, if okay, he said that was a clarity question for Siraf. So yeah, I didn't want to misunderstand that, but it seems like what he was talking about was annihilationism. And so that just the rough layout of what that is basically that hell is temporary and eventually you will cease to be, is the permanent state of somebody who is not united to God in Christ, is that they are not they don't in fact have an eternal soul on the house, so to speak. That's something that's contingent upon responding appropriately to the gospel. Do you guys have anything you wanted to add on that?
I don't think so.
Okay, fair enough. Anything from you, Dale?
Well, I'll just say, like, yeah, I don't believe in annihilationism. I don't think that's biblical. I think we will be some people will be suffering for eternity in I take a quarantine model of hell, right, where it's a relational separation from God,
Yeah.
not an ontological separation, and therefore that argument that you made from the annihilationist doesn't register. Now, I'm open to the possibility. At one time I was open to it. I'm not so sure now, but maybe people within hell, like kind of taking the C.S. Lewis view that the doors to hell are locked from the inside. Maybe people in hell could choose. So it's not imposed by God as a punishment externally, but they could choose to, okay, I've had enough. I want to annihilate my soul. I was open to that as a possibility from Richard Swinburne, but I don't lean towards believing that today, but I'm still open to it as a possibility. But I'm definitely 100% against annihilationism for everyone in hell and against annihilationism as a punishment imposed by God externally on people.
Yeah,
Just
I
for
like
anybody
that. I'm on the same
go ahead,
page
go ahead,
with you. I was saying I'm on the same page. Yeah, that sort of relational separation. That's a choice that we've made. Yeah, the C.S. Lewis imagery that you invoke there. Certainly, I'm on board with that as well. I'm not a proponent or adherent to annihilationism either. I think for those who have chosen to be separate from God, they have chosen that, and that is the choice that they've made and will have to live with, but want to live with. So I'm pretty much again on the same page as Dale here.
Awesome.
Fair enough.
I'm feeling smart tonight. I've got Michael on my side, so I'm doing well.
Michael, you seem to be a pretty good addition to these. We might have to have you around more than once. It looks like, okay, here we go. So Justin says we need a whole discussion on this. Okay, if you're interested in annihilationism and more about this, you should check out the website Rethinking Hell Ministries. Google Rethinking Hell Ministries. Chris Date is one of the most prominent voices on this, as well as Glenn Peoples, I believe is his name. These guys do a really great job explaining themselves and making sense of it. If you want to learn more on YouTube, you can look up the Theopologetics. That's Theopologetics channel on YouTube, where Chris Date talks about some of this stuff and does a lot of addresses on Rethinking Hell Ministries. And he does a really great job of articulating his view, even if we don't agree with it.
And Josh, you just were a terrible host. I mean, the best episode, the most epic debate with Chris Date versus yours truly, me and David Russell, the host from Faith
Let's do it.
We actually, we already did a show. We did a debate on Skeptics and Seekers about a few years ago. So that's actually, if you search Real Seekers, Chris Date and Hell, you'll see Chris Date versus me and David Russell.
What?
Yeah.
How did I not know about that? Okay, no, I need to see that then. Yeah, yes. No. Then scratch that. Before you do anything with Rethinking Hell Ministries, go to Real Seekers and search for that debate. That sounds like a good time.
So Dale, I'm curious. Just while we're on this topic, and somebody saying there needs to be a whole episode on this. I don't subscribe to the view that hell is a literal place of burning fire. Rather that, if anything, hell is the absence of God, who is light and who dwells in light. And so that hell rather is actually a place of utter darkness, and that really the fire is symbolic for suffering, perhaps even the ongoing lust or burning for sin, maybe. And so, I'm curious. Are you in agree? Would you agree with that or no?
So mostly, but not with the last little bit. So I definitely take the same view as you in terms of what Gary Habermas and J.P. Moreland call the torture chamber model of hell. Absolutely not. It's not Dante's Inferno. Demons are shoving pitchforks up our rumps for all eternity, and none of that's true. So I definitely agree that the fire is metaphorical, and same with the darkness, right? And Gary Habermas mentions, like, look, these if this is literal, they're contradictory, because fire, it brings light.
Right.
So like, how can there be darkness and fire, right? So but where I would maybe disagree is I see the fire as also metaphorical for, in the New Testament, it's almost a good thing. It's about purging and eternal punishment. The reason I'm a penal substitutionist and atonement theory, I think it's crucial. Punishment plays the role of reforming the character. It's necessary to reform the character, and that's why we are punished in hell through that relational separation of God, and we're forced to confront our sins, and we go through that agony and stuff. So I think the fire is more metaphorical of, like, we're being purged, it's God's wrath and of sin, and you're having to be refined, but unfortunately you're never going to be refined because you're going to keep sinning for all eternity in hell, type deal. So
Good. So, when I read Revelation, for example, and hear about the lake of fire, which is an interesting and somewhat contradictory image in of itself, right? A lake of fire, unless you live in Cleveland, Ohio, where the river catches on fire literally and burns. I was just my wife and I were on our 20th anniversary trip last year. We went to Italy. So we were in Rome a year ago. Thank you. And we went to right across from the Colosseum. I don't think a lot of people know this, but you have the Roman Colosseum, and then literally like, a couple hundred yards away, you have Nero's palace, and you can see like the Colosseum right from Nero's palace. I didn't even know that, and I didn't know that it was like that close. You could almost like throw a rock and hit the Colosseum, or vice versa. But the where he had that lake there, and right, he would put Christians on stakes and light them on fire at night, and then in the reflection of the lake, you would have the reflection of fire, and so that's where the image of lake of fire comes from. It's not really talking about hell, but it's symbolic of suffering, perhaps even persecution. But that's where that imagery comes from, the fire reflecting off of the actual lake that he put them on posts around and burned them on.
That's fascinating. So I did not know about, like, I knew about Nero's Lake. Obviously, that's where they built the Colosseum, and that's like how they used to have naval battles, like in the earliest period, because all of the tubes were all set up and stuff. But I had no idea about that was the Lake of Fire. So that's totally new to me, but fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So I've tended to associate that with like persecution and or like suffering, and that I've also tended to think of, when I'm reading Revelation, that lake of fire imagery is more like a gateway or a door, an entryway into the abyss, the underworld, if you will. But yeah, I don't know. It's a fascinating image to me, the whole lake of fire thing, and yeah.
Like I said, I've never encountered it, but it makes perfect sense to me, and you may be right and stuff like that. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. That was awesome.
Right on. Well, it looks like we're out of questions. I am super, super happy with this stream. I can't say enough. Thank the audience for their time and attention. This has been fantastic. All the interaction in the live chat. I'm satisfied. This was really cool, and I'm super happy to see you again, Michael, and get your interaction and see you in action here. Very, very impressed. I'm so glad to meet you, and I'm hoping to do this again in the future, because I really appreciated that. And thank you again, Dale. Obviously, tribute to Dale. I'm going to put these back on. Anybody who's still listening, go ahead and like and subscribe for this video. Please go and check out the Real Seekers channel on YouTube. Like and subscribe. Some of the videos over there are fantastic. He does a special focus on the Shroud of Turin, so if that interests you, go and check that out. Dale is no joke. He's got some cool stuff over there. And also, if you guys like let's say more abstract discussions that are centered around a more kind of right brain thinking than left brain thinking, logic is your thing, but you like being creative, you might be interested in my segment called The Cosmic Corner. Our next episode is going to be on June 1st, which is a Saturday, which is odd. We're not normally streaming on Saturday, but that's just the availability of my guests. I'm going to have the guys from Identity Crisis YouTube channel on to talk about identity and the image of God. It just so happens to land on the first day of Pride Month. No, that was not on purpose, but symbolism happens, doesn't it? And so we're going to discuss identity on the first day of Pride Month in relation to the image of God. And there's the link. Cool. So screenshot that, check that out. That's the debate between Chris Date and our friend Dale, and David Russell was on earlier. But yeah, if you're interested in identity, the identity problem, especially in the cultural milieu right now, the way that identity and anything is simply associated with it has to comply to the political trinity of skin pigment, sexual proclivity, and genitalia. And if that doesn't fly for you and you want to talk about why it doesn't, that's what we're going to be talking about on June 1st. And that's going to be really cool. And so that's my segment that I do. It's rather different than some of the things that we do on the other segments, but I think that's cool and there's room for it. But if you're still listening right now, I want to thank you for your time and attention. Go ahead and, like I said, subscribe to the channel. Check out some of the other stuff that we have on the live tab. There's lots and lots and lots of content on there. And with that said, in the absence of my brother Tyler, I'll say good night. God bless. And stay like Christ.